Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece, My Crew is from Otherworld, by FanficLord03. Ryunosuke accidentally traveled to the world of One Piece and was bound to the god-level pirate crew system. My crew? Yeah, it's a little special. First Division, Night Raid, from the Akame ga Kill. Second Division, the Akatsuki, led by Pain, from the Naruto world. Third Division, the Seven Deadly Sins. Adios.
Yakos launched an attack on the Dragon Hunter pirates. If Ryunosuke gets involved, Sengoku said gravely, he'll be dead. Garp let out a dismissive grunt. Though Garp and Yakos shared a strained past, the friction between them was more than just professional. Yakos hadn't returned to Marineford for years, largely because of Garp's presence. Their relationship had long since soured. Still, Yakos was a vice admiral of the Marine headquarters. His strength was no joke, comparable to a full-fledged admiral. If someone like him were to fall at the hands of the Dragon Hunter pirates, the consequences for the Navy would be severe. He's a grown man, Garp said with a frown. Shouldn't he be responsible for his own reckless decisions? He crossed his arms and scoffed. What, you expect me to tell Ryunosuke, hey, don't kill that lunatic, he's one of ours, tch. That guy's always been nuts. Sengoku stayed silent. He knew Garp wasn't exaggerating. This wasn't just about rivalries or grudges. Yakos had always been difficult, abrasive, impulsive, and obsessed with a decades-old feud over something as petty as a name. A man like that inevitably invites disaster. Still, if Yakos provoked the Dragon Hunter pirates, then the blame, and the consequences, were his alone to bear. You're right, Sengoku finally muttered. No matter how we look at it, it's not worth reigniting a war with the Dragon Hunters over one man's ego, especially not now. Garp nodded solemnly. The last time, we were lucky. They showed restraint. But if we push them again, don't expect mercy. Favors, after all, were a two-way street. If you didn't offer respect, how could you expect any in return? Sengoku turned to a nearby marine. Inform Sakazuki. Let him decide how to respond to this mess. Just then, a communications officer arrived, standing at attention in Garp's yard. Advisors Garp and Sengoku. Your presence is requested at a Navy headquarters meeting. A meeting? Garp raised an eyebrow. Now? It had been a long time since the Navy convened its top brass. The last major assembly was during the war with the Dragon Hunter pirates. Since then, everyone had been licking their wounds, recovering from injuries, reorganizing ranks, and handling the internal fractures that had spread like cracks across the Navy's foundation. For a meeting to be called now, something big was happening. Understood. We'll head there immediately, Sengoku replied. Minutes later, the two elder Marines stepped into the main conference hall. They weren't alone. Vice Admiral Suru, Rear Admiral Gion, Onigumo, and numerous high-ranking officers were already present. Even the three admirals, Fujitora, Ryokugayu, and Borsellino, were in attendance. Garp and Sengoku were the last to arrive. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't them. It was the empty seat to Sakazuki's left. Normally, Borsellino sat there. Now, he had shifted to the right, making space for someone else. Someone important. All present, Sakazuki said flatly. Wendy's, let's hear it. The air tensed immediately. Everyone turned toward the source of the voice that hadn't yet spoken. And then, he appeared. A man in a dark government uniform stepped forward from seemingly nowhere and took the vacant seat. Behind him stood a familiar face. Bluno from CP0, the user of the door fruit. Clearly, they'd been waiting in an adjacent dimensional space all along. I bring orders from the world government, Wendy's announced with a calm, diplomatic smile. Effective immediately, the 7 warlords of the sea are hereby abolished. Gasps rippled through the room. All privileges and protections extended to the Shichibukai are revoked. They are now considered enemies of justice and will be pursued accordingly. That alone would have been enough to send shockwaves through the room. But Wendy's wasn't done. To aid this transition, the world government will be deploying a support force of 500 pacifistas under Admiral Borsellino's command. Furthermore, world conscription will resume immediately, and finally. He paused with a smirk. All top-tier warships and upgraded naval armaments will be allocated to your disposal. Sengoku's jaw tightened. Garp scowled. The room fell into a heavy silence. It wasn't that this announcement came out of nowhere. The warning signs had been there. During the war at Mary Joieuse, the world government had summoned the 7 warlords. Not one had answered. Weevil had already been killed. Buggy vanished. Wise enough to avoid clashing with the dragon hunters. Hancock, Mahawk, and Doflamingo outright ignored the order. Law refused, stating he had his own mission. And with Doflamingo now backed by Ryunosuke, the balance of power had shifted even further. The warlord system had become obsolete, a relic of the past. Now, the world government wanted to clean house, and while they claimed this was about justice, everyone in that room knew the truth. This was about power. A desperate attempt to reassert authority after the humiliation at Mary Joieuse. A move to silence the growing doubts among allied nations, and to reinforce the heavenly tribute system that was already crumbling. Vice Admiral Suru was the first to speak. So, this meeting wasn't a discussion at all, it's a delivery. Wendy's didn't even blink. You could say that. The Navy's logistics, strategy, and deployments are all ready. The new ships have improved speed, combat potential, and defense systems. World conscription protocols are already in place. You've done it before, you know how it works. As he spoke, Suru's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just oversight. It was control. Never before had the world government directly embedded a representative within the Navy chain of command to this degree. This Wendy's, he wasn't going anywhere. She glanced at Sakazuki. Sure enough, the fleet admiral kept his expression unreadable, but his silence said it all. He knew. He allowed this. And now, the Navy's independence was hanging by a thread. Wendy's clasped his hands behind his back. Oh, one more thing, he added with a smile. I'm not just a messenger. As of today, I'm officially a member of the Navy. My position is Secretary General of Marine Headquarters. I'll be coordinating operations directly with Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. He bowed slightly. I look forward to your cooperation. Crane looked back toward Sakazuki, eyes cold with understanding. So this was it. A permanent government agent embedded within the Navy's core leadership. The title, Secretary General, was just window dressing. The leash had finally been clipped to the collar. She wanted to say something. So did Sengoku. But they said nothing. The meeting dragged on until evening before it finally came to an end. Most of it was spent listening to that so-called Secretary General Wendy's spout nonsense. Bureaucratic jargon, empty platitudes, and veiled commands. He talked for hours without saying anything useful. Midway through the meeting, Garp stood up and declared, "Gotta use the bathroom." He never came back. No one questioned it. Garp wasn't the kind of man who'd waste time listening to government flunkies blowing hot air. Now, outside the meeting hall, a small group had gathered. Garp, Sengoku, and Suru stood together under the quiet twilight. Admiral Fujitora, Isho, soon joined them. Admiral Isho, Garp said, munching on senbei, weren't you given a mission just now? What, not planning to follow through? No, Isho said with his usual calm. The task of wiping out the 7 warlords of the sea, that'll be handled by others. Garp raised a brow, crunching loudly. Why's that? Isho gave a gentle smile. Tell me, why were the 7 warlords created in the first place? His voice was light, but the question cut deep. Because we feared their power, Sengoku answered after a pause. To fight them directly would cost us too much. True, Isho nodded. But I recall you were the one most firmly against the Shichibukai system, Admiral. You called it the Navy's greatest stain. Suru narrowed her eyes, curious. So why decline to be part of their removal now? Isho lowered his head slightly, his expression unreadable behind the blindfold. Let me ask you instead, do you know much about pirates? Of course, Garp scoffed. I spent my life chasing him. No, I mean the dragon hunter pirates. At the mention of that name, the group fell silent. The dragon hunter pirates weren't part of the 7 warlords. though they had 2 former Shichibukai on board. Still, their rise wasn't backed by the system, they carved their own path. Given how the world government had backed off after their invasion of Mary Joieuse, it was clear they had made a reluctant compromise with the dragon hunters. The truth was harsh. Neither the Navy nor the world government could afford another clash with them, not now. As much as it embarrassed the higher-ups, stability took priority, and the dragon hunters were too powerful to provoke lightly. On the seas, justice and evil were merely labels. What mattered was strength. That's how the 4 emperors survived while countless weaker pirates were crushed under the banner of justice. It was a rotten system, and Sengoku had long grown tired of it. Isho exhaled slowly. What that man, Ryunosuke, is doing may change the sea itself. A rare smile crossed his face. To be honest, part of me wants to board his ship. See what kind of justice he's building. No one responded, but none of them judged him either. Isho's words were bold, perhaps even treasonous by old standards, but not untrue. Whatever came next, it was out of their hands. Meanwhile, in the East Blue, the ship of the gods was on the move. But this voyage wasn't to cross the red line or scale Reverse Mountain. No, they had only one target in mind, Yakos. The old vice admiral had been making repeated attacks on members of the dragon hunter pirates. It had nothing to do with any orders from above. He was acting on his own. Which meant one thing. He was fair game. The ship sliced through the waves and arrived at the outskirts of Rogue Town. Nearby, dozens of scattered, uninhabited islands dotted the sea. These small, desolate landmasses were often used by pirates as temporary hideouts. "He's here," Ryunosuke murmured, standing at the prow. A powerful aura had just entered his sensory range. Strong, yes. But not overwhelming. It was the kind of strength that would have shaken the seas a few decades ago, but not anymore. A warship on the horizon, Najenda reported, her voice calm but alert. From the deck, a raspy voice echoed across the water. "So you've finally come, dragon hunter pirates." A gray warship drifted into view, and atop it stood a tall, weathered man with a coat fluttering behind him. His presence was heavy, his haughty, oppressive. "Vice Admiral Yakos of the Marine Branch," Ryunosuke greeted plainly. "Care to explain why you've been attacking members of my crew?" Yakos looked just as ancient as Garp, 2 lions from the same era. Men who once chased the Pirate King across the seas. By now, he should have been basking in retirement, not picking fights with pirates half his age. The old man grinned through his wrinkles. "Because I can't beat your main crew." Ryunosuke blinked. Even Najenda froze. "What?" Uvajin muttered, utterly confused. The crew exchanged glances, unsure if Yakos was joking or had finally gone senile. "I mean it," Yakos shouted. "I knew I couldn't take on your core team, so I went after the easier ones to get your attention." The bluntness was baffling. And then, without warning, Yakos made his real intention clear. "I want to join the dragon hunter pirates." Silence. Total silence. Even the waves seemed to pause. "You what?" Ryunosuke asked, blinking in disbelief. "You heard me." Ryunosuke stared at the man. This was someone who once stood at the top of the Navy's ranks during Roger's time. Someone who'd fought beside Garp, perhaps even shared battlefields with legends. And now he wanted to switch sides. "Explain," Ryunosuke said at last. His tone didn't shift, not warm, not hostile, just cautious. Yakos didn't hesitate. "The Navy today is rotting from the inside out. The world government no longer represents the justice I once swore to uphold. I can't beat you, Ryunosuke. That's a fact. So I'd rather join you, and if someday the dragon hunter pirates stray down a dark path, I'll be there to stop it." His eyes gleamed, not with ambition, but conviction. Ryunosuke narrowed his gaze. The logic was bold, but not entirely unreasonable. Yet allowing a former vice admiral to join was no small matter. The dragon hunter pirates had already been recognized by the system. Any new addition would shift their dynamic and possibly alert the world government. Besides, what good would an old man bring? "I refuse," Ryunosuke said coldly. "You bring no value to my crew." His voice was like steel. "And one more thing. If you attack any more of my people, I'll personally send you to the depths." He turned to leave, done with the conversation, but Yakos wasn't finished. "I know things about Gold D. Rogers' final voyage, about Raftel. I know where some of his former crewmates are." Ryunosuke paused. Now that was a different matter. Most of Rogers' crew were still alive, scattered across the world. Men like Rayleigh, Jabba, Irvin, and of course, Douglas Bullitt, who carried the eternal pose to Raftel itself. Information like that wasn't something to ignore. Slowly, a faint spark of interest glinted in Ryunosuke's eyes. "Raftel, huh, now that was worth listening to, Captain." Noticing Ryunosuke fall silent, Najenda glanced at him in confusion. Ryunosuke exhaled deeply, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "Assign him as captain of a miscellaneous work squad. Once the rest of the arrangements are done, have him come see me," he said calmly. Najenda nodded and wasted no time. Summer Susano, she vanished from the deck in a blur, heading straight for Yakos. A short while later, the aging vice admiral stepped aboard the ship of the gods, and immediately, his eyes widened. From the moment his feet hit the deck, Yakos felt it, the pressure. It wasn't just hockey, it was killing intent, strength, conviction. Every crew member here radiated the aura of a predator. Not just powerful, monstrous. The core members of the Dragon Hunter pirates were all assembled. Aside from the Phantom Troop, this ship now housed Nitrade, Yahiko Puppet, and most notably, the Seven Deadly Sins. For a man who had once chased the Pirate King, Yakos rarely feared others. But now, standing among these monsters, he felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. The world truly had no idea how powerful this crew had become. "First of all," Ryunosuke said, stepping forward with his arms crossed, "welcome to the Dragon Hunter pirates, as captain of a logistics unit." Second, his eyes narrowed, "Tell me what you know." As he spoke, Ryunosuke mentally activated his status panel. He scrolled through it swiftly, searching for Yakos's name. Nothing, not even a single line of system recognition. That meant one thing. Yakos hadn't truly committed himself to the crew. Whether he had hidden motives or was simply testing the waters, Ryunosuke didn't care. Because in the face of absolute strength, no scheme would amount to anything. "I currently know the whereabouts of 3 members of the Roger Pirates," Yakos began, regaining composure. "First is Gabon. He's settled down on a quiet island in the New World. Living like a normal old man, far away from the chaos." Ryunosuke nodded. Gabon had vanished from history, most believed him dead. Second, Douglas Bullitt. After escaping from Impelled Down, he went into hiding on Alcatraz. Yakos's tone dropped slightly, "Rumor has it, he's preparing something big." And the third, Yakos paused, "You already know. Silver's Rayleigh, still in seclusion at Sabo de Archipelago." Ryunosuke's brows rose slightly at the mention of Gabon. He hadn't expected that legend to still be alive. Most intel networks didn't even have a trace of him. In Douglas Bullitt, he was the wild card. That man held one thing no one else in the world had: Raftel's eternal pose. If they got their hands on it, the Dragon Hunter pirates could reach the final island without collecting the road poneglyphs. All those tales and rumors about what Roger left behind, they might finally be proven. Of course, that eternal pose wasn't handed down for a reason. Raftel wasn't a place any pirate crew could reach. Only those worthy, those powerful enough to survive the journey, would ever see it. And Ryunosuke fully intended to be one of them. "Understood," he replied at last. "You'll lead a special intelligence unit under the logistics squad. I'll assign 500 operatives under your command. I want information. Locations, patterns, movements. I want every surviving member of Roger's crew tracked down." Yakos gave a small nod, but before he could respond, Ryunosuke turned away. Those men didn't just disappear. They chose to stay hidden. There's a reason they stepped back from the world after Roger's death. Rayleigh chose to train the Straw Hats. Shanks built an empire. Buggy fumbled into infamy. The rest? Either fulfilling Roger's will or guarding something he left behind. Yakos hesitated. "Captain, if I may, follow the order," Najenda interrupted sharply. "In the Dragon Hunter pirates, disobedience leads to death, don't forget that." Yakos shut his mouth. Shortly after, Najenda organized a ship and crew to escort him to his new post. With those matters settled, Nijiko returned to Ryunosuke's side. The rest of the crew had assembled on the main deck. These were the elite, the backbone of the Dragon Hunter pirates. The Phantom Troop was still away. Yahiko, you and Jigokudo will be our final line of defense. Ryunosuke stood before them, his voice firm. This is the base I've chosen. It will be the sanctuary for our crew, the fallback point should anything happen. Your team has a navigator. You'll move independently from now on. He handed an eternal pose to Yahiko. Preserve our foundation, no matter what. Jigokudo's powers were formidable in combat, but more than that, they were versatile, able to conceal, protect, and rebuild. Given the dangers looming over the world government's tightening grip, and even the mysterious man Feng Yue, Ryunosuke had learned one lesson well. Complacency kills, and the sea was no longer forgiving. I understand, Captain, Yahiko replied, taking the eternal pose with a solemn nod. One more thing, Ryunosuke added. You'll maintain our contact with Guild Tessero and Dr. Maiskina Aesir. Olga's safety is also your responsibility. Dr. Maiskina and Olga had been left in the New World during their last mission. The new base was located in the same region, making Yahiko's team the perfect choice for both defense and logistics. And if we're attacked? Yahiko asked bluntly. Do I have authorization to engage? Ryunosuke's gaze sharpened. Anyone who invades our territory, destroy them without hesitation. Begin preparations immediately. You leave within the hour. If anything happens, report directly to me. Understood, Yahiko saluted, then turned and departed with his squad. The Dragon Hunter pirates were about to sail again, and this time, the world would be watching. Enemies would gather. Opponents would scheme. But while the world stared at the flag on the sea, Yahiko's team would protect the heart beneath it. As his silhouette faded, Ryunosuke turned to the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas, you'll lead the investigation into demonic energy in this world. Escanor mentioned something strange recently. That energy's been bothering me. This world may be far more complex than we believed. If anything suspicious appears, contact me immediately. Do not act alone. Meliodas gave a small grin and nodded. Got it, Captain. He paused, then stepped forward. But before I go, there's something I need to show you. From behind his cloak, he pulled out a small, ornate box. Whatever was inside, it clearly mattered. Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed slightly. What is it? In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. During that time, the Dragon Hunter pirates made their way to Shimotsuki village. After all, Kuina was still there, and Ryunosuke hadn't forgotten her. Upon arriving, the crew didn't waste time wandering. They headed straight for Ishin Dojo, the place where Kuina had once trained and where her father still taught. Ryunosuke stood at the entrance and knocked with practiced courtesy. We're here to see Kuina, he said calmly. The disciple who answered was clad in traditional samurai armor, far from the unassuming students who once populated the dojo. After the last great battle, Shimotsuki Koshiro had made a decision. No more hiding. Ishin Dojo had officially embraced its Wano heritage. The village, too, had transformed into a full-fledged samurai settlement. Their ancestors had once served in Wano's proud warrior class. Now, their blades and hearts followed that same path again. Please, come in, the disciple said respectfully. Led through the outer hall, Ryunosuke and his crew were brought to the backyard, where 2 familiar figures waited. Koshiro stood beside his daughter. Kuina, dressed in refined samurai robes, brightened the moment she saw them. Captain, she called out, stepping forward with eager steps. She had wanted to rush to see the moment she heard the Dragon Hunter pirates had resumed their voyage. But her father had insisted she remain behind, at least for now. Instead, Koshiro sent a message, inviting the crew to visit. And Kuina, though reluctant, obeyed. Captain Ryunosuke, Koshiro greeted. Might I speak with you privately? He then turned to the rest of the crew with a small smile. Everyone else, you're welcome to enjoy the food we've prepared. Even standing before one of the most feared pirate captains in the world, Koshiro's composure didn't waver. He wasn't a warrior who bent to reputation. Sure, Ryunosuke nodded, but make sure there's plenty of meat. With a grin, he followed the old swordsman, curious as to what this meeting was really about. Everyone else dispersed, led by the local samurai to the village's dining area. Though some could have used their observation haki to eavesdrop, Ryunosuke had already asked them not to, and they trusted his word. "Kuina, go on," Koshiro added once they were alone. "We won't need you here for now." "But father, go," he said again, firmly. Kuina hesitated but obeyed. As she walked past Ryunosuke, she gave him a lingering glance. There was something in her eyes, worry, perhaps, or hope. Once she was gone, Koshiro stood and entered the house. A few moments later, he returned, holding a wooden box. "Captain Ryunosuke," he said, setting the box down, "this contains everything we've uncovered about the Infinity Stones, along with the stones we've managed to collect. I figured you'd be interested." Ryunosuke nodded. He had suspected as much. The old man didn't summon him just for a reunion. The lid opened with a faint creak, revealing several white stones that glowed with an eerie luster. The pressure that radiated from them was unmistakable, raw, unstable, and violent. It was the same oppressive energy he'd once felt from Uranus, the king of heaven. Though Ryunosuke still wasn't sure what Uranus truly was, he suspected it wasn't just a weapon. It was a living being. One that Rox D. Zebek had once managed to dominate, even if briefly. According to Koshiro's notes, embedding these stones into the human body came with catastrophic risks. They had tested it on several volunteers, but none survived for long. The human body simply couldn't handle the chaotic power within. Eventually, Koshiro shifted the focus of his research, from humans to weapons. "I didn't want to follow the same path as my father, Kosaburo," Koshiro said quietly. "But in the end, there weren't many alternatives." Ryunosuke closed the box gently. "Is there a known source for these stones? A natural production point? Or are they just scattered across the world, waiting to be found?" Koshiro's eyes gleamed. "There is a source." He stepped back and pointed downward. "It's right beneath Shimotsuki village." Ryunosuke raised a brow. "That's why you built the dojo here?" "Exactly," Koshiro said. "But before I show you the entrance, there's something else I need to ask." Ryunosuke folded his arms. "A question? I'll answer if I can." "You're Kuina's captain," Koshiro began, his tone shifting, "but more than that, Kuina likes you." The words hit like a hammer. Just moments ago, they had been discussing infinity stones and ancient weaponry. Now, this, for a moment, Ryunosuke, the man feared by admirals, emperors, and revolutionaries, stood frozen like a stiff piece of iron. All his life, he had ignored these feelings. Whether it was Kuina, or Akame, or any of the women who had looked at him with affection, Ryunosuke had never known how to respond. He was a blade, a weapon forged by battle, not emotion. But now, standing face to face with Kuina's father, there was no escape. Koshiro stepped forward. "By your expression, I can tell you've at least sensed it, so I'll ask plainly, what are your intentions?" Ryunosuke's mouth opened, then closed again. Words struggled to form. He wasn't afraid of battle, but this was unfamiliar territory. And just when he finally drew in a breath to speak, "I like the captain too," a voice cut through the garden like a flash of lightning. Ryunosuke's eyes snapped toward the courtyard gate. There stood Akame, arms crossed, crimson eyes steady. And beside her, Kuina, lips parted in shock, frozen mid-step. Seeing both Kuina and Akame appear at once, Ryunosuke's headache doubled instantly. He'd already noticed Akame's occasional jealousy before. As for why she'd shown up now, it was Leonie's idea. Akame had feelings for Ryunosuke. That much was obvious, even if she didn't understand it herself. She had always clung to him with quiet trust and silent loyalty. But Leonie, who'd grown up in the slums and lived through all kinds of experiences, understood exactly what was going on. And she had made the call. Let Akame come. Better to deal with emotions openly than let them fester. Besides, Kuina hadn't stepped forward to claim him, not yet. So for the sake of her sister's happiness, and to avoid future drama, Leonie had orchestrated this ambush. Now, Ryunosuke stood frozen in place. "Akame, Kuina, you too." He had been carefully arranging the words in his head for several minutes. But the moment they both appeared, everything he'd rehearsed vanished in an instant. What was he even supposed to say? What was the situation? Who was he? Where was he? "This is Akame," First member of the Dragon Hunter Pirates, correct? Said Shimotsuki Koshiro calmly. Kuina's told me. He glanced at the girls, then turned his sharp gaze to Ryunosuke. If you truly like both of them, I have no objections, but you'll need to earn their trust and permission. As her father, I'd prefer not to see my daughter share her heart, but I won't interfere too heavily either. Ryunosuke blinked. Wait, what? Most fathers would have drawn their sword by now. But Koshiro, he said it like he was discussing weather over tea. Now the girls were staring at him, quiet, expectant. Kuina's gaze held subtle nervousness, while Akame simply looked calm and unreadable, as always. Ryunosuke exhaled sharply. I do, like both of them. He bit the words out like a battle confession, and somehow, saying it made his heart pound harder than any war. To his surprise, both women relaxed visibly. They were afraid he'd brush them off, or worse, deny any feelings at all. Two soft blushes crept onto their cheeks. Brother Ryunosuke, we'll leave you to your talk, Akame said calmly, taking Kuina by the hand. Sister Kuina, let's grab something to eat. If we don't hurry, they'll devour all the meat. In a flash, they disappeared, leaving Ryunosuke standing alone in stunned silence. Though he was a decisive and deadly fighter on the battlefield, when it came to this kind of thing, he was completely out of his depth. My apologies, that was probably awkward, Ryunosuke muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. On the contrary, Koshiro said with a faint smile. For someone as young as you, to be this grounded and composed, it's admirable. It shows you don't treat affection lightly. That's more valuable than any sword. He turned, motioning for Ryunosuke to follow. Come. Let me show you the place I spoke of. They traveled through Shimotsuki village, eventually reaching its rear section. The village was divided into three main parts: the residential area, the central dojo grounds, and the restricted zone behind it. Very few had ever entered this third region. Only Zoro and Kuina had stepped foot here before. It was considered sacred and dangerous. Eventually, they arrived at a wide, circular depression in the earth, a massive crater. As they stepped closer, Ryunosuke felt it, a faint, flickering energy in the air. An echo of something powerful. He remembered the overwhelming aura from the infinity stones Koshiro had shown him earlier. This was the same energy, only diluted. This is where we first discovered the infinite white stones, Koshiro explained. There's a natural force field surrounding this place. If I hadn't released my observation haki while standing right at the edge, I would have missed it completely. So even if the world government passed through here, they'd never detect it? Exactly. Ryunosuke squatted beside the crater, running his fingers through the soil. He sensed it too, a subtle resonance of power laced into the earth itself. It wasn't strong enough to pinpoint, but it was present, everywhere. Mining under these conditions would be near impossible. How do you harvest the stones, then? Ryunosuke asked, his brows furrowed. The ore is too scattered. With this, Koshiro produced a long, polished rod. We call it a stone probe. It's the result of years of research. He inserted the rod into the ground. Instantly, the scattered aura began to converge toward the tool, absorbed into it. Within seconds, the surrounding energy faded, completely neutralized in a 1-meter radius. This area has already been mostly exhausted, Koshiro added. If you want real results, you'll need to go deeper. But that carries risks. Ryunosuke stood up. What kind of risks? Unpredictable ones. Koshiro's voice turned more serious. When Kuina ventured into the deeper regions, she emerged with a powerful infinity stone. But her sword aura changed. You must have noticed it yourself. Ryunosuke nodded slowly, recalling their last spar. The blade she wielded carried a strange breaking force, something unnatural. Same with Zoro. When he entered, he was still a young boy, but something in him awakened. His demonic energy? Ryunosuke asked. You noticed it, then? Ryunosuke had never given it much thought before. In the original world, Zoro's strength had always been attributed to training, talent, and sheer willpower. But this revelation added a new layer to his history. Perhaps the seeds of Asura mode had been planted here long before Eni's lobby. Ryunosuke stepped toward the crater's edge. Can I go in and try? Koshiro nodded and handed him the stone probe. Take it. But be cautious. What awakens in there isn't always kind. With the tool in hand, Ryunosuke descended into the crater. The deeper he went, the more the air seemed to hum with restrained power. His haki sharpened, his skin prickled. The structure of the pit itself was strange, like ripples frozen in stone, layers of earth etched with patterns that screamed of impact and ancient force. This is a meteor crater. It wasn't natural, it was made by something that fell from the sky. The realization struck him like thunder. Could it be that the Infinity Stones were not born of this world at all? Could they be fragments of something greater? Something cosmic? According to Enel's information, the moon was once known as the Infinite Continent, the limitless land beyond the sky. If that was true, then it made perfect sense that something like the Infinity Stones originated from outer space. Back when Enel first mentioned the Infinite Continent, Ryunosuke had questioned him. The answer was vague but telling. Enel believed that reaching the Infinite Continent would offer new opportunities, perhaps even unlock untapped strength. A new realm of growth. Of course, Ryunosuke had chalked it up to Enel's wild imagination. He was a self-proclaimed god, after all. After being defeated by Luffy, Enel had fled to the sky and within a short time, proclaimed himself the ruler of the Infinite Continent. If a guy like Enel could conquer it that easily, then its threats probably weren't all that formidable. So Ryunosuke hadn't paid much attention. But now, things had changed. After everything he'd discovered about the Infinity Stones, the rhythm beneath the earth, the strange energy signatures, he was beginning to wonder. What really lies beyond this world? Ryunosuke shook his head. No, that was a question for later. Right now, he needed to focus. As he moved deeper into the crater beneath Shimotsuki village, he passed a large, marked stone slab, an indicator that he had entered the unmined zone. Koshiro and his people had long exhausted the outer areas, but the core remained largely untouched. Buzz! Ryunosuke suddenly staggered as a wave of energy surged from the ground, coursing through his feet and into his body. His haki flared instinctively, and he wrapped himself in armament to resist, but it was useless. The energy flowed through his defenses like water through fingers. And then, it stopped. He exhaled slowly, checking himself. No injuries, no pain, no change. Whatever that energy was, it had simply passed through him. It seemed this place truly could awaken something within a person, yet oddly, nothing had been triggered in him. Maybe I'm just maxed out already, he muttered, half joking to himself. He raised the stone probe Koshiro had given him and plunged it into the soil. The rod trembled and absorbed the ambient energy. Within a meter radius, 2 points pulsed faintly. Ryunosuke reached into the earth and pulled out a single infinity stone, smooth, dense, and glowing faintly with internal light. He had handled these stones before, but this was the first time he had ever mined one. The sensation was strangely fulfilling. He turned to leave, but then paused. Thump, thump, a rhythmic sound reached his senses. Heartbeat. He stood still, scanning the area with observation haki. Shimotsuki Koshiro remained outside, calm and unbothered. Either he didn't sense it, or it wasn't something he could perceive at all. I should check it out. Ryunosuke followed the pulsing rhythm, descending into the core of the crater. The energy grew thicker, heavier with every step. No stone. No visible object. Just deep, spiraling pressure and the memory of something ancient. Still, if there had ever been a meteorite core here, wouldn't someone have claimed it by now? Then again, destiny had a habit of leaving gifts for people like him. People from another world, with systems. Thump, 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 the rhythm accelerated. Ryunosuke narrowed his eyes and rammed the stone probe into the ground. Crack! The rod shattered instantly. What? Even Ryunosuke was surprised. That probe was designed to channel the energy of Infinity Stones. For it to explode on contact meant something below had reached a level far beyond what they had ever encountered. No hesitation. He dropped to his knees and began to dig, bare-handed. The soil felt denser than normal. Each handful peeled back layers of time. And then, there it was. A white, spherical stone, unlike the fractured shards scattered nearby. This was smooth, dense, and warm, alive with pulsing light. The surrounding shards felt like dust compared to this perfect core. Ryunosuke reached out, the moment his fingers touched it. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Heart of Eternity. Reward: 10,000 reputation points, active ship spirit unlocked, glory aura gained. His eyes widened. The Heart of Eternity? That was a name loaded with meaning. He quickly pulled open his system panel. Sure enough, the new item had been added to his inventory. Heart of Eternity, classification, unknown description. Number data? Ryunosuke muttered. Even the system doesn't know? That alone was a sign of how rare this object was. He glanced again at the rewards. All of them were tied to ships. Could it be that this thing enhanced vessels? He clenched his fist around it. Should I test it on the ship of the gods later? While deep in thought, a glimmer in the corner of his eye caught his attention. A stone tablet, partially buried nearby. Unlike the marker slabs Koshiro's men used, this one was ancient. The carvings etched into its surface didn't resemble any language Ryunosuke recognized. It looked like the poneglyph script, but different, cruder, older. He pulled at it. What he thought was a small plaque turned out to be a massive slab, over twice his height. And oddly heavy, even for someone of his strength. This isn't normal. Ryunosuke had enough power to lift chunks of island. For this slab to feel heavy, it had to be infused with some kind of pressure. Or perhaps an enchantment. He stored it in his system's inventory for now. The heartbeat had vanished the moment he retrieved the Heart of Eternity. Naturally, it was a heart, after all. Back outside, Shimotsuki Koshiro stood waiting patiently. When Ryunosuke emerged from the pit, the swordsman's eyes sharpened. You found something? A big harvest, Ryunosuke replied, brushing dust off his coat, but we've got other business now. I won't stay in Shimotsuki village much longer. Koshiro nodded, but said nothing. Ryunosuke continued. About the conflict with Kaido and the Shimotsuki clan. I know, Koshiro interrupted. Kuina already explained everything. He turned to face the distant horizon, arms folded behind his back. Our clan, our village. We are swordsmiths now. Not warriors, not samurai of Wano. We made our peace with that a long time ago. Whatever happens in Wano, let it happen without us. His voice was calm, almost indifferent, but Ryunosuke could feel it, resolve, not apathy. Peace wasn't cowardice. It was a choice. After bidding farewell to Shimotsuki Koshiro, Ryunosuke led the crew back to the ship of the gods. Captain, is it just me, or have we suddenly gotten stronger? Najinda asked as she stepped onto the deck, her senses sharpened. Ryunosuke nodded. You're not imagining it. The glow around the crew was subtle but unmistakable, the result of the glory aura that had just been unlocked from the system's reward. The Heart of Eternity wasn't just a treasure, it was reshaping the power of their entire fleet. This is the strength of unity. A team power-up, granted through the system. Let's not waste the momentum. He turned, eyes sharp. We're heading for the new world, first stop, Pluto's wreckage. With every rising storm, Ryunosuke knew one truth remained constant. Only strength brings freedom. And finding the remains of Pluto, one of the legendary ancient weapons, would serve two purposes. Upgrade the ship of the gods and skyrocket their reputation. I understand, Captain, Najinda responded, then asked, are we taking the Calm Belt or going the Grand Line route? We'll take the Grand Line. I want to pass through Fishman Island first. He didn't elaborate, but there were still unresolved thoughts lingering beneath the sea. Najinda passed along the order to Nijiko, and soon the entire crew was back in motion. As the ship sliced through the currents, Ryunosuke quietly approached Mario, who was, unsurprisingly, flirting with the princess from his squad. Mario, take me to the ship's core. Even Mario, caught mid-blush, straightened up immediately. Right away, Captain. He pulled a green warp pipe from inside his coat and gestured for Ryunosuke to follow. Moments later, they emerged in the core chamber of the ship of the gods. This room pulsed with power. It was the heart of the vessel, where the energy core hummed like a slumbering dragon. The same core that had reacted to pure gold was now being prepared for something even greater. Let's begin. Ryunosuke activated the system's item reward, Ship Spirit. Active mode. In an instant, a gentle light filled the chamber, and from it emerged a floating figure, a ship spirit, shaped like a glowing elf, delicate and ethereal. But this wasn't just aesthetic magic, Ryunosuke could feel the spark of life within her. A true spirit. A sentient being. Can you understand me? He asked carefully. Yes, Captain, she replied, her voice soft yet clear, warm like the sea breeze. Ryunosuke raised a brow. Impressive. The ship of the gods now had a will, a guardian. You are the official spirit of this ship, he said. From this moment forward, you'll manage its systems, monitor its structure, and protect its heart. He then reached into his inventory and retrieved the Heart of Eternity, a stone pulsing with cosmic light. This is your core. The key to awakening the full potential of this ship. Do you accept it? The spirit's eyes lit up. Her delicate hands reached forward reverently, and she took the Heart of Eternity like a divine offering. Without another word, she floated to the center of the chamber and pressed the heart into the core's housing. Boom! The entire chamber flared with radiant light as the Heart of Eternity sank into place. The ship's spirit dissolved into pure energy and fused with the heart. A wave of force erupted, so intense it pushed Ryunosuke back a step. He instinctively reached for his observation haki, trying to scan the transformation. But it was blocked. TCH. I can't even peek into my own ship? He chuckled wryly, but he wasn't frustrated. He knew this was a good sign. Whatever was happening inside, it was massive. He called Mario back and returned to the deck. Despite the core undergoing fusion, the ship of the gods continued to sail smoothly, cutting through the sea like a blade. There was no instability, no delay, just quiet, efficient progress. The crew slowly adapted to their new surge in power. Some meditated. Others sparred. A few simply sat and let the energy soak into their bones. By nightfall, Ryunosuke retreated to his cabin. There, he did what he always did between battles, restore and reflect. The world was changing fast. The dragon hunter pirates were evolving rapidly. And now, with the Heart of Eternity fused into their ship, they had stepped into territory no pirate crew had ever reached. He had barely closed his eyes when, click, the door creaked open. He turned, instinctively alert. A figure entered. Akame. She stood at the threshold, her presence quiet but purposeful. Her red eyes locked with his. Akame, what are you? Before he could finish, she let her clothes slip off. Ryunosuke froze. Her breathing was soft, warm, her gaze unwavering. He had always been immune to temptation, until now. After their feelings were laid bare, after the emotional tension that had simmered for so long, now, there was no denying it. Brother Ryunosuke, she whispered, stepping closer. I know you're awake. But please, don't speak. I'm a little embarrassed. Her voice trembled, yet her steps never stopped. By the time she reached the bed, Ryunosuke felt heat rushing through his body. His entire frame stiffened. Literally. Moments later, the warmth of her body slipped under the covers, and silence fell. Akame, shush, she murmured, fingers against his lips. And then, when it was over, Ryunosuke lay awake, holding the sleeping Akame in his arms. He couldn't sleep. His mind was reeling. If the cabin weren't soundproofed, the crew would have had a lot of questions come morning. He let out a long sigh, just as he began to drift into thought. Click. The door opened again. This time, it was Kuina. She froze the moment she stepped in and saw Akame resting in Ryunosuke's arms. Both she and Ryunosuke blushed instantly. I came at the wrong time, she whispered, hurt flickering in her voice. She turned to leave, but Ryunosuke sat up, eyes serious. No, you came at the right time. Come here. Kuina hesitated. Then their eyes met, and she stepped forward, drawn in like a moth to flame. In the blink of an eye, another week had passed. Ryunosuke's energy swept across the training field, releasing a wave of icy cold that blanketed the area. The surrounding temperature plummeted, frost forming along the edges of the trees. Even Akame and Kuina felt the chill slow their movements. Brother Ryunosuke, you're cheating, Akame pouted, backing away with visible frustration. This isn't normal swordsmanship. I agree, Kuina added with a grin. You're using tricks, not technique. Across the field, Najenda and the others watched the sparring session unfold with growing curiosity. Something's changed between those three, Leonie said, narrowing her eyes. You noticed too? She added, arms folded, eyes glinting. Before, Kuina and Akame often trained together, sometimes clashing fiercely, sometimes helping each other improve. But Ryunosuke rarely joined in. He was simply too strong, sparring with him disrupted the balance. But now, he was right there with them. Not overpowering, not distant, but engaged, playful. They're definitely together now, Najenda said without hesitation. And I mean together, like Tatsumi and mine. At that, Tatsumi and mine, quietly observing from the shade, immediately stiffened. We haven't, Tatsumi began to protest. Oh, please, Leonie interrupted, pulling him into a side hug. You're a couple. Everyone knows. Tatsumi blushed, utterly defeated. Despite the teasing, the crew was genuinely happy. Their captain, once emotionally distant, had finally opened up, and that change brought warmth to the entire ship. After the short training episode, the Dragon Hunter pirates arrived at their next destination, Fuchsia Village. Ryunosuke hadn't been back in years. The place was almost frozen in time. The windmill spun gently on the hill. The same narrow dirt roads crisscrossed through the village. The same wooden buildings stood tall in humble defiance against the passing of years. This was a place untouched by the chaos of the outside world, a pure land. You're back? A familiar voice called out before they even made it into the village proper. You brat. You've been gone so long and you still remember how to come home. It was Makino, unloading crates from a cart near the bar. She walked over, hands on her hips, smiling but clearly annoyed. There was no formal greeting, no stiff body language, no change in her tone despite his title. She saw Ryunosuke not as the feared pirate captain, but as the kid she used to scold for spilling drinks behind the counter. Sister Makino, I had things to take care of. I'm not blaming you, she said, waving him off. You're back now. That's enough. Come to the bar. I made food. She turned back to the workers and barked orders, then led the way with no room for argument. Captain, we'll give you some space, Najenda said as the rest of the crew dispersed, giving their captain room to reconnect with his roots. Ryunosuke brought Akame and Kuina along with him to Makino's bar. This is where the captain lived when he was young, Kuina asked, glancing around the modest interior. Sister Makino, I heard he used to work here, Akame added. The small bar didn't look like the kind of place where someone like Ryunosuke would be raised. There were no training posts or weapon racks, just wooden stools, bottles, and the faint scent of old oak and citrus. Yes, Makino nodded. This boy was a handful. Always sneaking out with that rascal Luffy, but he never crossed the line. And he was a great help around the bar. After he left, it took me a while to get used to the silence. Sister Makino, Akame said softly, her tone far warmer than usual, can you tell us more about his childhood? Makino smiled again but didn't immediately dive into stories. Instead, her eyes narrowed curiously. Wait a second, you too, are you? Sister Makino, Akame and Kuina are my girlfriends, Ryunosuke replied without flinching. He may have stumbled through emotions before, but now, he was clear. Oh, both, huh? Makino raised an eyebrow, then smirked. Alright, sisters. Come sit over here with me. She pulled the girls aside for some food and a long chat, leaving Ryunosuke standing awkwardly at the center of the bar, completely ignored. What are you just standing there for? Makino glanced over her shoulder. You're back now. That means you're working. Today's service is yours. Yes, Sister Makino, Ryunosuke scratched his head and sighed, then moved behind the counter and began prepping drinks and snacks like he never left. Imagine that. The captain of the Dragon Hunter pirates, the man whose name echoed through the New World, acting as a waiter in a sleepy village bar. If word got out, the seas would never stop laughing. Meanwhile, Akame and Kuina were quietly grilled by Makino about everything Ryunosuke had done while at sea. His battles, his losses, his victories. She took it all in with pride and a glint of nostalgia. As the sun dipped low and stars began to pepper the night sky, the crew began exploring the village, curious about their captain's past. Eventually, Najenda found something strange, a cave hidden near the cliffs. Inside, she found a sea king, chained, dormant, still alive. Its size was enormous, though signs of age were evident in the rusting chains and the faded scent of blood. It had clearly been here for years. Najenda frowned. No villager could have done this. She had spoken briefly to the Dayton family, and while they had some strength, this was far beyond them. This was the work of someone powerful, and then, "You're the 1st Division captain of the Dragon Hunter Pirates, aren't you?" A voice echoed from the shadows. Najenda turned sharply. "Carlos?" She recognized the man instantly. A member of the red-haired pirates? Ryunosuke had mentioned that crew long ago. Apparently, he'd crossed paths with them during his early days, and Fuchsia Village, it seemed, was a shared connection. "This is my territory," Carlos said coldly. "You've seen too much." His eyes narrowed. His smile was twisted. "You'll die here. I can't have anyone leaking what's hidden in this place." A surge of violent haki erupted from his body, sick, unstable, deranged. Najenda didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said flatly, "but it sounds like you want to fight." She took a step forward, lips curling into a smile of her own. Originally, Najenda had been aimlessly searching for something worthwhile to do. That changed the moment she stumbled across a secluded cave, and an even more shocking discovery within it. A powerful presence. Unrefined, chaotic, but undeniably dangerous. "Well then," she murmured, eyes gleaming with interest. "Looks like things just got interesting." In response to her intent, a towering Susano materialized behind her, its glowing form roaring to life. From within the cave, a man slowly stepped forward, Carlos. His expression twisted into a wild grin as he met her gaze. "Wanna fight me?" he asked, voice dripping with deranged excitement. He. A sinister aura surged around him. "I've finally mastered that power. Even your captain hasn't managed it yet." He chuckled darkly, raising a hand as the ground beneath him cracked. "Using the Dragon Hunter pirates as my test subjects, not a bad way to begin." He pointed at her, an accusing finger cloaked in arrogance. "After all, you're the ones who gave me the intel in the first place." A wave of destruction exploded from his body, a tangible pressure that made the air vibrate. Najenda's eyes narrowed. This energy, it was familiar. It reminded her of the Infinity Stone Ryunosuke had once sought, similar, but not the same. Where Kuina's aura was calm and balanced, Carlos's power was unstable, ragged like an out-of-control beast. He had tapped into something unnatural, and it was tearing at him from within. Boom! With no hesitation, Najenda launched Susano forward. The massive avatar's strike tore through the air, leaving a trail of glowing afterimages. But Carlos didn't flinch. He roared, power bursting forth, and caught Susano's descending fist with one hand. A violent shockwave rippled out, cracking the cave walls. Carlos smirked wider. "Is this all the Dragon Hunter pirates have to offer? How disappointing." He took a step forward, still holding the giant fist aloft. "If that's all you've got." Bang! Before he could finish, Najenda vanished and reappeared right in front of him, her entire body cloaked in armament haki. Without a word, she brought her fist down on his head. Boom! The impact detonated like a bomb, sending debris and dust in all directions. Meanwhile, back in Fuchsia Village, night had settled over the sea, and business at the bar was booming. Ryunosuke, wiping sweat from his brow, handed drinks across the counter, but suddenly, he froze mid-pour. A fierce tremor in the distance. A clash of powerful haki, and something darker. "That's Najenda's aura," he muttered. "She's fighting seriously." Another presence pulsed faintly, unfamiliar and warped. "Hey, where's my drink?" A patron barked impatiently from across the bar, completely unaware that the man he was rushing was none other than the captain of the Dragon Hunter pirates. Ryunosuke slid the mug across the table, coming right up. Without another word, he disappeared into the back and approached Makino. "Sis, I've got something to handle. Kuina, Akame, help out here for a bit." Before Makino could respond, he vanished into the night. Back at the cave, Carlos's laughter had grown increasingly unhinged. His twisted ambition filled the area like poison. And Najenda, calm as ever, stood ready to strike again. Ryunosuke landed nearby just in time to witness the madness. He frowned. "Carlos, what the hell are the red hair pirates thinking?" He hadn't seen Carlos in battle before, but this wasn't just combat, it was mania. Carlos turned, eyes gleaming. Well, look who joined the party." He spread his arms wide, power bursting from him like an explosion. "Perfect. Now I can capture both of you and dissect what makes you so special." "Dissect this," Ryunosuke said coldly. He vanished, reappeared behind Carlos, and with a single palm strike, knocked him unconscious. The sheer force shattered the surrounding rocks. Carlos hit the ground like a broken puppet. Even so, the twisted energy still clung to his unconscious body. "Captain," Najenda called, "you need to see this." She quickly explained everything: the cave, the battle, and Carlos's obsession. Ryunosuke's expression darkened as he approached the half-devoured corpse of a sea king nearby. "The same sea king, the one that bit off Shanks's arm," he muttered. Pieces were missing, carved with surgical precision. Carlos had been experimenting on it. And for what? Ryunosuke narrowed his eyes. He knew Shanks already got the infinite white stone intel from Koshiro. Why stay here? No sign of the rest of the red hair pirates. Carlos was alone. He pulled out his Den Mushi. "Beru Beru, Beru Beru," click. "Ryunosuke," Shanks's voice came through. "Something wrong?" "Carlos attacked my crew." Ryunosuke replied bluntly. "Thought you should know." Shanks's tone instantly sharpened. "Did you kill him?" "Not yet," Ryunosuke said coldly. "But if you don't give me a damn good reason why he's here, I will." Silence. He insisted on studying that Sea King. Shanks finally replied. "He's our ship's head scientist." "I allowed it. But I didn't expect him to go this far." "He nearly leveled Fuchsia village," Ryunosuke said flatly. "If I hadn't stopped by Makino's today, the whole island might have been destroyed." Shanks sighed heavily. "If you can, don't kill him. I'll take full responsibility. I'll come get him myself." He paused. "As a gesture of goodwill, I'll give you exclusive intelligence on the world government." That got Ryunosuke's attention. He waited for a moment. Carlos was unhinged, clearly affected by the white stone's residual energy. But if Shanks was willing to make a trade. "Fine. We're heading to the Grand Line soon anyway," Ryunosuke said. "Meet me in Whiskey Town." He ended the call and turned to Najenda. "Take him back to the ship. No special prison needed. Treat him as a training dummy for the crew. Let them beat the crazy out of him." She smirked slightly. "Understood." Ryunosuke stepped into the cave one last time. There, scattered across a table, were Carlos's research notes, pages filled with diagrams, theories, and madness. To Ryunosuke, it looked like ancient gibberish. But Dr. Asiya might be able to make sense of it. After leaving the cave, Ryunosuke turned back for one final look, then raised his hand. Boom! A brilliant explosion engulfed the cave, tearing through stone and soil. The entire area collapsed in on itself, reduced to rubble in seconds. Whatever Carlos had left behind, his twisted experiments, remnants of that cursed aura, Ryunosuke ensured none of it remained. Even the corpses of the Sea Kings by the shore were incinerated in the blast. He didn't want any trace of that madness lingering in the East Blue. With the job done, he turned and made his way toward the mountain. As he approached the old forest trail, a bandit leapt from the shadows, sword drawn. "Who goes there?" the man barked. "This is Dayton's turf. One more step, and we'll slice you up and eat you for breakfast, brat." His men fanned out behind him, weapons glinting. They were posturing hard, like they were guarding a Yonko's treasure vault. Ryunosuke smiled. "Yede, it's me." "Ryunosuke." The bandit blinked, squinting. The sun was low, casting shadows across Ryunosuke's face. And after 4 long years away, he'd changed: sharper eyes, broader shoulders, a presence that weighed like a storm cloud. "Ryunosuke, don't mess with me." Yede raised his sword. "Do you know what that name means now? That kid grew up to punch world government admirals and stomp 4 emperors into the dirt." But the more he stared, the more familiar that face became. "Wait a sec, boss, it's Ryunosuke, he's back." The entire mountain shook as he sprinted uphill, yelling at the top of his lungs. Moments later, familiar faces came pouring out of the old hideout. There she was, Dayton, still fierce, still built like a cannonball. But even she had aged. 4 years was a long time, and time left marks on everyone. "Ms. Dayton," Ryunosuke said with a grin, "I'm home." He'd always called her that, even when she'd threatened to smack him for being too formal. Eventually, she gave up. Deep down, she saw him, and the others, as her kids. "You little punk," she barked, voice thick with emotion. "What, you finally remembered where you came from? Come on, we got meat, we got booze, you'll be gone again soon anyway, right?" She rambled, half yelling, half choking on the words. And yet, her eyes were warm, her heart even warmer. Ryunosuke smiled, following her inside. The others gathered around, laughter and old stories flowing freely. Later, when things calmed, Deiden pulled him aside. She gave updates on the other 3 kids she raised, Ace, Sabo, and Luffy. All of them were alive and making their own waves across the seas. When she said it, her whole face lit up. But time had carved deeper wrinkles into her cheeks. Seeing her like that, Ryunosuke grew quiet. When she wasn't looking, he slipped a drop of life essence into her jug of sake. It wouldn't make her younger or turn her into a monster. But it would strengthen her body, slow her aging, maybe buy her a few more years of health and laughter. They drank until midnight, until Deiden passed out at the table with a turkey leg in one hand and a jug in the other. After making sure everyone was asleep, Ryunosuke left quietly and made his way back down to village. Makino's bar was almost closed. The clatter of cleaning echoed inside. She was sweeping the floor when she spotted him. "You're back?" she said, a warm smile on her face. "Help me clean up first, will you? I've got something for you." "Of course," he said, rolling up his sleeves. Here, in this tiny village, there were no pirates, no Yonko, no battles. Just home, and Ryunosuke loved it. No matter how feared or respected he was out there, inside this bar, he was just family. Later, after the floor was cleaned and the shutters locked, he joined Makino, Kuina, and Akame in the back room. Makino sat them down, eyes gentle. "Akame and Kuina already told me everything," she said. "I may not be your mother, Ryunosuke, but I watched you grow up, your family." She hesitated. "So if you ever need anything, or if you decide to get married, I hope you'll have the ceremony right here, in Fuchsia village." Kuina and Akame both turned red, staring down at the table. They knew what she was about to say, and now that Ryunosuke was here, they didn't dare look up. "I understand," Ryunosuke said, smiling. "Thank you, Sister Makino. I won't plan the wedding just yet, but next time I return, I'll make it official." He was a pirate, but one with modern sensibilities. A proper wedding wasn't too much to ask. Makino beamed. "I trust you." She pulled out a small wooden box. "Here, I made these a while ago. 4 necklaces. You're so lucky, you're hogging too." She handed the necklaces to Kuina and Akame, simple in design, but brimming with care and meaning. "These aren't just jewelry," she said, "they're blessings." "Thank you, Sister Makino," the 2 women whispered, touched beyond words. For all their battles and treasures, nothing they'd found in the Grand Line matched the value of these. They spent the rest of the night in quiet conversation. Makino passed on some advice, and one stern warning. "No bullying the girls," she said, giving Ryunosuke a pointed look. Eventually, they parted ways. Makino went to rest, and the trio returned to the ship. They sat on the deck beneath the stars, wrapped in peaceful silence. No words were needed. Somewhere out there, Nijiko was sailing her own path. Meanwhile, on the Red Hair Pirate's ship, Shanks sat alone, brows furrowed. Carlos. That name now left a bitter taste. "Let it go," Ben Beckman said, exhaling smoke. "That stone isn't worth it. Something's off about all of this." They had chased the infinity white stones for years, hoping to find something to counterbalance the world government's grip. But Carlos's descent into madness proved how dangerous the stones truly were. Shanks opened a wooden box and stared inside. Old parchment, faded notes, and fragments of infinite white stone, glowing faintly. A gift from Koshiro Shimotsuki. Shanks's face was calm, but inside, his thoughts were a storm. Elsewhere, on a hidden island deep within the New World, a small figure stood atop a cliff, arms crossed. "It seems Roy's plan failed in the end," the girl said softly, voice filled with contempt. This method was flawed from the start, depending on them to achieve the grand plan. How laughable. She looked young, barely a teen, with features strikingly similar to Perona's. But her aura held ancient weight, far older than her body suggested. She turned toward the shadows, where a name echoed once again. Roy, the man who once stood before I am of the world government. The little girl, Kaja, folded her arms as she finished her rant. The other figures gathered in the shadowy chamber exchanged glances and gave subtle nods. None of them had ever agreed with Roy's decision, even back when it was made. But the circumstances then had left them no choice. That war, that cataclysmic battle had shattered everything. They were barely alive afterward, wounded, shaken, scattered. Even if they had objections, they had no strength to resist Roy's will at the time. But now, they had recovered. And Roy's so-called world government, a splintered faction he carved out, had nearly been obliterated by a rising pirate crew, the Dragon Hunter Pirates. Under such circumstances, their frustration bubbled over. Since Roy's choice has clearly failed, one of them muttered, then why should we keep pretending that damned agreement matters? I've had enough of this whole, Kaja snapped, I'm going out. She turned on her heel. Kaja, a man with a tired voice called out. Wade, an older fighter with a calm temperament. I won't stop you. But don't take the Dragon Hunter Pirates lightly. Anyone strong enough to threaten Roy's organization isn't some back-alley thief. Kaja scoffed. HMPH. You always say that. Besides, Wade added, you'll probably challenge them the moment you see them. You think beating them proves Roy was wrong. Her eyes flashed. He wasn't wrong. Kaja's pride wouldn't let her stand down, not when a group like the Dragon Hunter Pirates had thrown Roy's legacy into chaos. Still, Wade continued softly, that crew isn't normal. Be careful. TCH. Don't lecture me. She waved him off. You supported Roy, didn't you? Mind your own business. I'm leaving. But just as she reached the threshold, a bitter cold swept into the room like a deathly breeze. Kaja froze, then narrowed her eyes. Krulu Busalud. What the hell are you doing? From the darkness, a man cloaked in shadows stepped forward. Krulu Busalud, the elusive figure who had once appeared in the holy land of Marihoa. His presence was like winter incarnate, quiet but oppressive. You cannot confront the Dragon Hunter Pirates, Krulu said flatly. What? Kaja snapped, stepping forward. Are you going to stop me? She raised her arm, ready to summon her power. Try me. But Krulu said nothing. He simply held out a crystal sphere. Images flickered to life within it. Battlefields drenched in destruction. The cries of clashing hockey, figures moving like shadows and storms. The recent battle between the Dragon Hunter Pirates and the remnants of Roy's faction played in stark, brutal detail. Kaja's expression shifted. Wait, they're dead? She muttered. But those guys just resurfaced recently, how? She had heard whispers of the clash, but seeing it, feeling the will to fight emanating from those warriors, it chilled even her bold heart. Their enemies hadn't simply fought to win. They fought as if death didn't matter. As if the only thing worth living for was the battle itself. For the first time, Kaja hesitated. HMPH. I'm not scared, she muttered, though her voice had lost its edge. But if you're already watching them, fine. I'll wait. She turned, her cloak billowing as she vanished from the hall. One by one, the others began to disperse. The urgency had passed. No reason to stay. Krulu, Wade called out as the cloaked man turned to leave. You've made contact with the Dragon Hunter Pirates before, haven't you? Can you get more information? Krulu paused. His eyes shimmered beneath the hood. I'll try. But the Dragon Hunter Pirates, he trailed off, then added with quiet weight, they're deeper than the sea. And with that, he vanished like mist. 5 days later. Ryunosuke and his crew had already passed the Twin Capes and crossed Reverse Mountain. The Grand Line stretched before them like a promise, and a challenge. Their first destination was Whiskey Peak, where they'd arranged to hand Carlos over to the Red Hair Pirates. If he wasn't dropped off soon, the man might not survive from sheer mental exhaustion. Mr. Carlos, you don't look too good, Tatsumi said with a grin, placing a tray of steaming food and bottles of sake in front of him. Eat something. Also, you didn't fight at full strength last round. You holding back on me? We're generous here, he added. Even prisoners eat well. Carlos sat stiffly, eyes sunken, bruises dark and fresh. His hands trembled as he lifted the sake bottle. Tears nearly welled in his eyes. He was sane again. no longer consumed by the chaotic energy of the infinite white stone. But the past few days had been a blur of beatdowns and training sessions. At first, he held his own. Despite his madness, he was no weakling. Even after being wrecked by Ryunosuke, he retained formidable strength. But the dragon hunter pirates, they were monsters. One after another, they challenged him. No rest. No mercy. Each crew member fought like it was their final battle. And even more terrifying, they recovered absurdly fast. Carlos would crawl off the training mat black and blue, only to see the person who beat him already eating, laughing, and sparring again. His wounds throbbed. Their wounds vanished. It was madness. I'm not even sure if I'm a prisoner, Carlos mumbled, gulping his drink. Or just an unwilling sparring partner in hell. He wanted to file a complaint, honestly, he did, but he had no grounds to. The dragon hunter pirates had shown him hospitality, patched his wounds, and fed him the best meals he'd ever eaten. While kicking the ever-living hell out of him, Tatsumi cracked his knuckles and smiled. Done eating? Let's go another round. I think I've leveled up since yesterday. Carlos wept internally. Forget Shanks scolding him. At this point, he'd happily crawl into the nearest crate labeled Return to Sender. 3 days later, Whiskey Peak. The ship docked at the port of Whiskey Peak under the golden afternoon sun. The town shimmered with heat and dust, but for Carlos, it was paradise. He staggered off the ship like a man returning from war. His expression was blank, his posture was robotic. But when he spotted the Red Hair Pirates ship anchored at the harbor, when he saw familiar faces waving from the deck, a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. If Carlos weren't afraid that Ryunosuke might casually slap him across the sea, he would have bolted back to the Red Hair Pirates ship in tears. The last few days had been complicated. On the surface, life aboard the Dragon Hunter Pirates ship had been normal. Good food, solid rest, plenty of sparring partners. But in reality, it had felt like being slowly roasted over a psychological spit. Was he a guest? A prisoner? A glorified punching bag? He still wasn't sure. And then came the voice that froze him. Carlos, thank you for accompanying us these past few days, Ryunosuke said, walking up with an almost teasing smile. You'll be returning to your own pirate crew soon. To be honest, I'm a little reluctant to see you go. Carlos chuckled nervously, trying to mask the desperation in his eyes. And no need to thank me, I'm just really looking forward to going back. He bowed his head quickly, forcing out an apology. What happened before was entirely my fault. I acted recklessly. He spoke so fast it nearly came out in a single breath. Carlos didn't want to risk offending Ryunosuke and earning another training week of hell. After all, only the 1st Division and a handful of combat elites were aboard the Ship of God right now. If the full crew were here, if the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Divisions had joined in. Carlos shivered. He couldn't even imagine surviving that. Ryunosuke simply gave him a nod and turned toward the shore. Soon after, their ship docked at Whiskey Peak. Captain, we've already made arrangements with the Red Hair Pirates, Donald reported as he greeted Ryunosuke at the port. They're waiting in the town. Good. Lead the way, Ryunosuke replied with a calm smile. I'm sure they've been waiting long enough. Donald was clearly relieved. He had believed all along that Ryunosuke and the others had survived that brutal war. Now, seeing his captain again with his own eyes, he was visibly moved. As they walked through the streets, Donald updated him on recent happenings. Nothing too urgent. Business as usual. The Dragon Hunter pirates still held sway in the region. Eventually, they reached a large tavern. Inside, the Red Hair Pirates were already seated. Captain Ryunosuke, Captain, Carlos cried, sprinting toward Shanks like a man fleeing from a nightmare. He collapsed at his captain's feet, eyes wet and voice choked. He tried to speak but only managed a series of garbled sobs. Shanks's brow furrowed. Releasing his observation haki, he scanned Carlos thoroughly. No internal injuries. No signs of torture. No broken bones. In fact, Carlos's aura was stronger than before. He looked like a man who had suffered greatly, but physically, he was in perfect condition. Shanks looked back at Ryunosuke with quiet confusion. Ryunosuke gave a light shrug. We didn't mistreat him. He ate well, slept well, and even had wine. He gestured toward Carlos. If you're in doubt, ask him yourself. Shanks squinted at his weeping subordinate. Knowing Ryunosuke's character, it was hard to believe he'd lie about something like this. So why did Carlos act like he'd survived a war? Shanks sighed. Let's not dwell on it. He turned to his right-hand man. Ben Beckman, take the crew back to the ship. I'll talk with Captain Ryunosuke for a bit. Beckman nodded and waved the others to follow. Ryunosuke also turned to his team. Go grab some food. Get some rest. We'll set sail soon. With a nod from him, the Dragon Hunter crew dispersed. Only Najenda remained behind. This was her role, his shadow, his eyes in the dark. Now, the tavern was nearly empty, save for the three of them. Ryunosuke turned to Shanks. So, the information, let's hear it. Shanks sat down across from him, his expression turning serious. The world government isn't what it appears to be, he said. The idea that it's governed by a council of nations is a lie. Ryunosuke raised an eyebrow. So, it's ruled by I Am? Shanks nodded. On paper, yes. I Am is the visible supreme ruler. But there's someone behind her. A presence that even I can't trace. That caught Ryunosuke's attention. Even now, despite their past confrontation, Ryunosuke felt the weight of the world government pressing like a silent tide. He'd suspected there were layers of power he hadn't uncovered. There's more, Shanks continued. When you fought the world government, certain factions never showed up. For example, CP0's commander-in-chief. He leaned forward. That man is the only person Kaido fears. Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed. Kaido. The so-called strongest creature in the world. A title that, while exaggerated, carried weight. Ryunosuke had clashed with him before, enough to understand that Kaido wasn't someone who feared anything easily. You're saying there's a person Kaido actually fears? He asked. Shanks gave a single name. Dizella. Najenda, silent till now, scribbled the name into her notes. What's his ability? His power level? Ryunosuke pressed. No idea, Shanks replied honestly. Only Kaido's faced him. If you want details, you'll have to ask the beast himself. He stood up, the conversation winding to a close. I've fulfilled my part of the deal. Just remember, don't underestimate the world government. That war you fought? It didn't even scratch the core. With that, Shanks left. Ryunosuke didn't stop him. A moment passed. Then he turned to Najenda. Inform the crew. Let them know everything. And remind them, we're not out of the woods yet. Later, in his quarters, Ryunosuke sat quietly, organizing the flood of new intelligence. I Am. The unknown entity behind her. The 5 elders, figureheads, yet elite warriors. The CP0 commander-in-chief, Dizella. And the mysterious role of the kingdoms within the world government. He tapped the table slowly, deep in thought. They'd already fought like hell just to make it this far. But now, it seemed the world government hadn't even used its trump cards. And the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Still, Ryunosuke smiled. Ha ha ha. The wild laughter echoed across the deck as Ryunosuke stood tall at the bow, wind tearing through his coat. This is the kind of sea I want to conquer, he declared, arms outstretched and eyes burning with ambition. We are the Dragon Hunter pirates. The strongest pirate crew. The ones who will rise above all others. The crew behind him broke into roars of approval. 4 years had passed since his journey began. 4 years that had sharpened his strength, solidified his crew, and forged his name into legend. Much of it was thanks to his system, but knowledge alone wasn't enough. Ryunosuke had navigated the political chaos, the power struggles, and the hidden forces of the One Piece world with tact, calculation, and instinct. Without that, even with the system, he might have dragged the entire Dragon Hunter pirates into ruin. But now, he was sailing into the unknown once again. And that, more than anything, made his blood burn with excitement. After reaffirming his next goal, Ryunosuke called the crew together. As for Shanks, after delivering his information and parting on good terms, the Red Hair pirates had already returned to sea. As a Yonko, Shanks had no reason to linger. The seas were stirring once more. The world government was moving, and the navy had begun to act more aggressively. In such uncertain times, avoiding excessive ties, even with allies, was the safer route. Captain, I've relayed orders to all units. Najenda reported as the crew gathered. No major updates yet. Captain Meliodas of the 4th Division is investigating something unusual and will report soon. Captain Yahiko has already reached the New World and successfully retrieved Doctor and Olga, per your instructions. Heracles accompanied them as ordered. Good, Ryunosuke nodded. Leone raised a brow. Captain, what exactly is going on? This sudden shift in movement. It's not like you to move without reason. She wasn't the only one confused. Several members, even among the 1st Division, had picked up on the tension. The sea has changed, Ryunosuke replied quietly. The world government isn't done. What we've faced so far might only be the beginning. His voice was calm, but the gravity in his words was undeniable. From this point on, soon they'll throw everything at us. So I want everyone on alert and ready. At his signal, Najenda began distributing intelligence to the corps officers. These weren't just subordinates. They were his family, his lovers, his most trusted comrades. The moment they finished reading, the atmosphere changed. No fear, no hesitation, just raw, electric excitement. Only the dragon hunter pirates could react like this, facing a threat that could bring down empires and grinning like it was a festival. Rest tonight, Ryunosuke ordered. We sail at dawn. The Grand Line has served its purpose, but this isn't our paradise anymore. He looked toward the horizon. The New World is where our legend truly begins. Kuina and Akame followed him as he stepped off the deck, a trail of wind sweeping behind him. The next morning, the dragon hunter pirates set sail. As they cruised forward, Ryunosuke occasionally glanced at his system panel, watching as his reputation points continued to tick upward. Every passing hour, his name spread further. Their ship, the Ship of God, was a symbol now, a legend drifting across the sea. No one in their right mind would challenge them on sight. Those who didn't recognize the ship avoided it. Those who did, fled. Soon, the crew approached the outer waters of the Alabasta Kingdom. To Ryunosuke, Alabasta was sacred ground. King Cobra had once recognized him as a divine savior, and the people had never stopped honoring his name. The steady flow of reputation points coming from the region only confirmed that the faith remained strong. Captain, ship ahead, Finks reported, jumping down from the crow's nest. Ryunosuke turned, curious. It's not a merchant vessel, Finks continued, and definitely not a pirate flag. Ryunosuke stepped forward, activating his Rinnegan. With a single glance, his enhanced vision pierced the sea mist. A strange ship with a design unlike anything common on the Grand Line. And then, he saw the logo. His brow lifted slightly. Advance. We know this one, he ordered. The gap between the two ships narrowed rapidly. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho, the unmistakable laughter drifted across the waves. Finks looked puzzled. That laugh, isn't that guy a straw hat pirate? The skeleton? Indeed, the figure leaping toward them across the water was a gangly skeleton in a tuxedo, top hat and cane included. It was Brook, the Straw Hat Pirate's musician. The Straw Hats had been scattered by Kuma years ago. Each was sent to a different part of the world to train. Brook, it seemed, had simply never made it back. Yo-ho-ho-ho, Captain Ryunosuke, long time no see, Brook called out cheerfully as he landed on the deck. So many beautiful ladies aboard. May I take a peek at your paw? Wham! Ryunosuke's fist collided with Brook's skull, sending him tumbling across the deck like a tossed bottle. I knew it, Ryunosuke muttered, still the same perverted skeleton. Kuina facepalmed. Akame simply sighed. Brook sat up, brushing off non-existent dust. Yo-ho-ho, it's just a joke. I was on my way to Sabaody, but I got lost, and well, I still haven't made it back. Ryunosuke shook his head. Of course you haven't. I don't think any of your crew understands what meeting place means. But there was someone he did intend to meet again, Nami. Especially since Najiko, now one of his navigators, was her adoptive sister. With everything stirring, Nami had the right to know the truth about her lineage and the world's situation. Get on board. We're headed to Sabaody too, Ryunosuke said. But if you get out of line, I'll grind your bones into soup. Clear? Crystal clear, Brook saluted. Captain Ryunosuke, you're so generous. May I have my own cabin? My bones get cold sleeping on the deck, yo-ho-ho-ho. Suddenly, the contract at Ryunosuke's waist pulsed faintly. He froze. Though the sensation disappeared in the next instant, he'd felt it, like a heartbeat in a graveyard. Something had changed. Brooke's ridiculous voice echoed again, breaking his focus. Yo-ho-ho, Captain? Did you hear me? Cabin? Blanket? Maybe a skeleton-sized pillow? Najenda, Ryunosuke said without turning. Give him a room, and if he peeks at anyone again, break every bone and dump him in a pot. Yes, Captain. Brooke let out a nervous laugh as he was escorted away. Brooke's ship, already worn and small in stature, was effortlessly absorbed into the ship of God. With its advanced capabilities, it took only moments for Ryunosuke's vessel to assimilate an ordinary ship like that. Not long after, Najenda returned to report to her captain. Brooke, who hadn't rested properly in ages, had retreated to his newly assigned cabin and immediately collapsed into a deep sleep, or at least, what counted as sleep for a skeleton. Captain, Najenda said hesitantly, that man, or rather, that skeleton. She paused, unsure how to properly address him. Ryunosuke glanced over, curious. What about the bonehead? He raised an eyebrow, surprised. Najenda was well informed. She should know about Brooke, the Straw Hat Pirate's musician. Everyone in the crew was familiar with the bounties and reputations of Luffy's crew, especially given their previous interactions. Still, something about her expression made him curious. I don't know. Something about that skeleton gives me a bad feeling, she said calmly but seriously. Ryunosuke chuckled. Brooke? He's mostly just a perverted clown. Annoying, sure, but harmless. Despite his ridiculous personality, Brooke was no joke in combat. The power of the revive fruit, combined with his refined swordsmanship, made him more than capable in battle. I understand, Captain. We'll be arriving at Alabasta by nightfall, Najenda said, adjusting her tone. We'll need to replenish supplies once we dock. How long will we be staying? Leave at noon tomorrow, Ryunosuke replied without hesitation. That evening, the ship of God arrived at the port of Alabasta. A massive flag bearing the sigil of the Dragon Hunter pirates billowed proudly above the harbor. The people in the port turned toward it with reverence, not fear. Ryunosuke stood at the railing, looking out at the familiar sight. A rare softness crossed his expression. He remembered how he'd once used a clever plan to extract the location of Pluton from King Cobra. Yet instead of resisting or retaliating, Cobra had shown nothing but faith, going as far as tying Alabasta's future to the Dragon Hunter pirates. Alabasta had once been a loyal ally of the world government. For Cobra to make such a choice, to abandon everything for a pirate captain, it proved his resolve. Najenda, handle the crew's errands, Ryunosuke said, stepping down from the ship. I'll be heading out on my own. And then, he vanished, leaving only a ripple in the air behind. We've arrived at Alabasta, Brooke stretched, holding a teacup in one hand. I'd love to take a walk. Maybe do a little dance. Yo-ho-ho-ho. He strolled up beside Najenda, who gave him a flat look. She was still trying to wrap her head around where the tea he was drinking was even going. We depart at noon tomorrow, she said curtly. Don't be late. Without another word, she turned and left to oversee the resupply. Brooke tilted his skull slightly, watching her go. This crew is different. Most pirates would have just plundered what they needed. But the Dragon Hunter pirates were choosing to purchase supplies legitimately. That alone told him a lot about their code. He took a sip of his tea, somehow, and wandered into the city, humming to himself. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke had already arrived at the royal capital. As he approached the palace gates, every guard who saw him immediately dropped to one knee in reverence. Without hesitation, he was led into the palace. The moment Cobra heard that the Dragon Hunter pirates had arrived, he rushed out to greet them personally, his expression a mixture of respect and nervous anticipation. No need for that, Ryunosuke said calmly, stopping Cobra just as the king prepared to kneel. I came to speak with you. Let's talk inside. The palace guards frowned slightly. To them, it was rude for someone to speak to a king like that. But recalling Cobra's long-standing instructions, never oppose the Dragon Hunter pirates, they held their tongues. Inside the great hall, Cobra bowed respectfully. May I ask what guidance you bring today, my lord? Ryunosuke wasted no time. Cobra, he began, the world government was founded by 20 royal families, correct? They were said to have formed it together. Cobra nodded slowly. But based on what I've seen, the world government is not governed by those 20 families anymore. That whole narrative smells like a lie. Cobra's expression grew solemn. You're right, he said. Our family left Mary Geoise precisely for that reason. He paused and retrieved a silk-wrapped scroll. What I'm about to share has been passed down through the generations of the Nefertari line. He handed the scroll to Ryunosuke. The parchment was old, but the writing had been carefully translated into the modern language of the sea. As Ryunosuke read, his eyes grew sharper. The scroll revealed a secret history. In the beginning, the world government had indeed been formed by 20 powerful royal families. But in truth, 3 families orchestrated the founding: the Guero, Biro, and Sinabel clans. They manipulated the remaining 17 into uniting under one banner. Once the alliance was secured, they appointed 5 elders, not to represent the families, but to rule absolutely. The noble families were given impressive titles and ceremonial power, but no real control. When the Nefertari family realized this deception, they withdrew from Mary Geoise and returned to Alabasta. In doing so, they also smuggled out crucial information about Pluton, one of the ancient weapons. The world government was enraged, but unable to act. At the time, Alabasta was still a military force to be reckoned with, and they had Pluton's secrets as leverage. As centuries passed, however, the world government's fear of Alabasta faded. Eventually, they allowed Crocodile to set up a shadow regime within the kingdom, hoping he would eliminate the last remnants of Alabasta's power. But Ryunosuke's intervention had crushed that plan. He'd thwarted Crocodile, reclaimed Pluton's legacy, and shifted the tides of history. The world government's fury over Crocodile's failure had been immense. In its aftermath, they tried to erase the embarrassment by targeting another warlord, Mariah, who was later nearly assassinated under Doflamingo's blade. It had all been part of a web of manipulation, retribution, and fear. Ryunosuke rolled up the scroll and stood. King Cobra, this is a training manual for armament hockey, he said, handing the booklet over. From today forward, all of Alabasta is to begin learning it. He turned to leave. If this kingdom is part of my flag, then it must never be weak again. The manual had been a gift from Silvers Rayleigh, the former first mate of the Pirate King. And now, it would become the cornerstone of Alabasta's rise. Under the cover of night, a lone figure wandered through the Alabasta desert. His coat fluttered in the wind, and the moonlight glinted off his skeletal frame. Looks like the poneglyph has already been moved, Brook muttered, staring at the empty chamber below the ruins. Then the rumors must be true. The dragon hunter pirates have taken the knowledge of Pluton for themselves. A strange intensity burned behind his empty eye sockets. Pururu, Pururu, the Den Den Mushi in Brook's coat suddenly rang. TCH. Who dares call me at this hour? Brook hissed, clearly displeased. If someone on the Dragon Hunter pirate's ship discovered this call, it could very well be his last. The Den Den Mushi's face transformed into the image of a masked agent. Sir, we're ready, the voice on the other end said cautiously. I've fully deciphered the material we recovered, awaiting your command. Brook's voice dropped into a dangerous calm. Proceed as planned, he ordered. The Whitebeard pirates have outlived their place in the world. It's time for them to fade with the tide of history. Whitebeard, the voice wavered. Understood. With that, the line went dead. Brook closed the receiver and turned to leave. He had lingered too long. Staying alone increased the chance of being discovered. For now, he needed to return and play his role. The next day, the Dragon Hunter pirates resumed their voyage. Their next objective was clear: enter the New World and establish dominance. The battle with the world government had shaken the power structures across the seas. Allied nations were beginning to doubt their loyalties. The Dragon Hunter pirates intended to press that advantage, to force the government into revealing its true hand. Ryunosuke had another goal too: Raftel. But unlike Luffy, he wasn't interested in collecting road poneglyphs one by one. What he needed was the eternal log pose in the possession of Douglas Bullet. The truth of the final island lay there. Not in chasing history but in owning the means to reach it. A few days into the voyage, the waters stirred with tension. A massive Navy fleet cut through the sea, its sails bearing the insignia of the world government. Their target, the Kurigana Island. Their mission? Eliminate one of the remaining 7 warlords of the sea, Dracul Mahawk, the world's strongest swordsman. I don't get it, one of the sailors muttered under his breath. They want to scrap the warlords. Fine. But why send us to confront Hawkeye of all people? That's suicide. The murmurs spread quickly. No one on board was thrilled about the assignment. Shouldn't a fleet admiral or at least admiral lead this mission? We've only got a vice admiral. Another soldier nodded. Yeah, Strawberry's strong, but we're talking about Mahawk here. Their commanding officer barked out. Enough whining. We're 4 days from the target. Just stay sharp and follow orders. Word is, the world government gave us something special for this fight. That didn't calm anyone's nerves, ship sighted. The cry from the crow's nest broke the tension. It's small, and, wait, are those baboons? Confused chatter rippled through the deck. In the distance, a modest vessel sailed toward them. Its crew, several sword-wielding baboons. What the hell is this? One Marine whispered. These aren't just random animals, another corrected. Those are Mahawk's trained warriors. They've inherited the ruins of the gloomy kingdom. If they're here, then Mahawk must be nearby, someone muttered darkly. But just then, the lookout shouted again. Wait, I see someone else, lying on the deck. A moment later, a Marine rushed to Vice Admiral Strawberry. Sir, that's Rorinoa Zoro of the Straw Hat Pirates on the ship. Zoro, Strawberry frowned. What's he doing with Hawkeye? He hadn't heard of any alliance between the Straw Hats and the swordsman. That made this situation even more puzzling. Hold formation, Stoloberry ordered. No need to engage just yet. On the baboon crewed ship, Zoro slowly woke up. Middle of the day already? He grumbled. Can't a guy get some sleep? He blinked at the baboons chattering around him. What now? Are we at Sabodi yet? The baboons ignored him and instead drew their swords. Zoro's instincts kicked in the moment he felt the surge of sword aura. Enemies, he muttered, staggering to his feet and stepping toward the bow. From there, he spotted the Navy fleet looming in the distance. Are they lost? Maybe they need directions. Zoro tilted his head, completely unfazed by the overwhelming number of battleships. His confidence, or perhaps cluelessness, was as absurd as ever. The baboons beside him shook their heads in disbelief. How could someone so perpetually lost act so smug? Wait, I'm a pirate, aren't I? Zoro said as if just remembering. So they're probably here for me. Just then, a second boat drifted into view. From it, a tall figure stepped onto the deck, cold and composed, with a massive black blade strapped to his back. Dracul Mahawk had arrived. Zoro's expression lit up. You're here. Get ready, Mahawk said calmly. This is no time for a nap. I don't suppose you've improved since the last time? Without waiting for an answer, Mahawk raised his arm, and with a flick of his wrist, unleashed a blindingly fast slash. Boom! A massive wave of sword energy ripped through the sea, cleaving a warship in half. Marines screamed as the deck split apart, smoke rising into the sky. Even Strawberry, experienced as he was, had no way to block that attack. He barely managed to leap out of danger in time. Mahawk, he shouted. By orders of the world government, the warlord system has been dissolved. You are to surrender immediately. Mahawk turned toward the fleet, expression unreadable. Surrender? He echoed. To be thrown into Impel Down? A prison already shattered by the Revolutionary Army? He narrowed his eyes. After all these years, perhaps you've forgotten something. I didn't become a warlord because the world government spared me. His voice was razor sharp, and for the first time in years, Mahawk truly spoke his mind. I became a warlord because you feared what would happen if I wasn't. He raised his sword again. Zoro, still watching from the sidelines, blinked. Yeesh, and here I thought I was ready for a rematch. The next slash tore through the fleet like a tsunami of steel. As Mahawk's devastating slash split the sea and shattered the Navy's formation, Vice Admiral Strawberry gritted his teeth and raised his voice. Engage, all units, attack now. The next moment, several figures leapt from the Navy flagship, not Marines in standard uniform, but strange individuals clad in form-fitting gear, their oars twisted and unnatural. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions tore through the shoreline as Mihawk's boat was engulfed in smoke and debris. The sea churned violently, the blast echoing for miles. Zoro, who had been watching from the sidelines, narrowed his eyes. What the hell? Using his observation haki, he could feel the immense power radiating from these newcomers. But they weren't ordinary Marines. Their movements were clean, robotic. Their presence, lifeless. They're not Navy, Zoro muttered, eyes sharpening. They feel wrong. Strawberry, shaken from Mihawk's earlier attack, stood rooted in place. These soldiers had clearly been dispatched by the world government, but even he didn't know who or what they were. They outranked no one and answered to no known command. And they showed no fear in the face of Mihawk. Zoro's jaw tightened. These freaks weren't after him, but he owed Mihawk a great debt. If he stood idle now, he'd no longer be Roronoa Zoro. Dark aura coiled around his frame as he placed a hand on his katana. The mountains and the sea, all of it is illusion. The nearby baboons immediately tensed. One of them hurled its long sword into the air without hesitation. Bang! Zoro leapt, landing on the airborne weapon mid-flight. Ito Ryu. Kurogiri Ei. A flash of black light streaked across the battlefield. Several of the world government's special forces were instantly bisected. Without missing a beat, Zoro rotated mid-air, drawing his second sword, now imbued with armament haki. Two-sword style. Each slash painted the sky with arcs of black steel, the sheer force shaking the air. For a moment, the desert ruins were his stage. Even Mihawk glanced his way, a flicker of surprise crossing his usually emotionless eyes. He'd expected Zoro to keep his promise and head for Sabaody, to reunite with his crewmates. But instead, Zoro had chosen to stand by him, blades drawn, against the full force of the government. And as the battle progressed, the darkness coiling around Zoro only thickened. Pirate Zoro, Strawberry muttered, his voice grim. Just what are you thinking? This wasn't just reckless, it was political suicide. The Navy was under orders to purge the remaining warlords. Getting involved now could pull the Straw Hat Pirates directly into the conflict. Vice Admiral Strawberry. A frantic lookout called out. A pirate ship is approaching, fast. What now? They're flying the Dragon Hunter Pirates flag. The sailor's face was pale, his voice trembling. It's them, sir, Ryunosuke's crew. The Vice Admiral's face drained of color. The Dragon Hunter Pirates. Of all the crews in the world, they were the last ones he wanted to see. Any other crew might avoid conflict with the Navy at a time like this. The world government had made its intentions clear. Wipe out the warlords, and by extension, crush dissent. But the Dragon Hunters, they didn't care, they never had. Strawberry's stomach churned as he remembered the stories. What this pirate group had done to cipher pole units, warlords, entire government outposts. No, they wouldn't walk away from this, and sure enough, high above the battlefield, dark clouds began to gather. Thunder rumbled. A massive silhouette emerged from the sky, the ship of God, casting a divine shadow over the sea. Even Mihawk's expression shifted slightly. So, he's come. The skies split as a figure descended from above, wings glowing faintly behind him. Ryunosuke, cloaked in divinity and dripping with battle intent, hovered above the ruined battlefield like a celestial executioner. Zoro. Long time no see. The swordsman turned, surprised. Ryunosuke? He hadn't noticed the Dragon Hunter ship in the chaos. But now that it loomed behind him, unmistakable and majestic, Zoro realized the battlefield had just tipped. You still owe me a drink, Ryunosuke said with a grin. Brooks aboard, join us later. He looked toward the unnatural soldiers. For now, let me clean up this trash. A surge of oppressive haki rippled from him. Even Zoro had to take a step back. These things weren't human. Ryunosuke could smell it on them. Twisted life forms, created by the world government, stitched together with bloodline factors and synthetic material. Tools of war disguised as men. Ryunosuke, Strawberry shouted, desperation in his voice. This is a matter between the Navy and the warlords. You have no place in this battle. Ryunosuke looked down with a mocking smile. The Navy? He scoffed. Go tell Sakazuki. Has he truly become the government's lapdog? He paused, narrowing his eyes. You can't even control these monsters you've brought. Do you think I care for your excuses? Strawberry opened his mouth to protest but stopped. He had no answer. These special agents didn't even answer to Sakazuki. They belonged to the new Secretary General, a puppet master hidden in the shadows. Ryunosuke raised his hand. You creatures should have never crawled into the light. He drew his blade. Instantly, a wave of deathly cold spread across the battlefield. Even Mihawk took a step back. Those touched by this aura meant nothing but ruin. The world government's enforcers locked their gaze on Ryunosuke. Then, without hesitation, dozens of them surged forward. But they didn't attack. They exploded. Boom, boom, boom. The suicidal detonation ripped the sea apart. A towering geyser of water and fire swallowed the sky. Zoro gritted his teeth and shielded his face. Strawberry stumbled. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Yet when the smoke cleared, Ryunosuke was still floating in place, unharmed. Disgust flickered in his eyes. He waved his hand gently, and the air shimmered. Dozens of the agents, mid-charge, suddenly halted mid-step. Their bodies twitched, convulsing violently, then CRRRK, CRRRK, snap, snap, snap. Bone and synthetic matter shattered in unison. One by one, they collapsed into the sea like broken dolls. Their bodies had been shredded by thin strands of steel like thread, so fine they were invisible to the naked eye. Only the stains of blood revealed their existence. Silence fell over the ocean. By now, Vice Admiral Strawberry had fallen into utter despair. Had it been a skirmish with some third-rate pirates, he might have had the confidence to hold the line. But this, the Dragon Hunter pirates had arrived in full force, and at their helm was Ryunosuke, their enigmatic and terrifying captain. The moment Ryunosuke appeared, Strawberry knew they'd already lost. You lot still standing there? Ryunosuke muttered, glancing at the remaining Marines with boredom. Want to stay and have dinner with us? His tone was so casual, it sent a chill through their spines. The Navy soldiers froze in place. None moved, none dared speak. Ryunosuke's gaze shifted to Strawberry, a flicker of impatience showing. The Vice Admiral's face twitched with a swirl of conflicting emotions, relief, shame, defeat, and reluctant gratitude. But in the end, reason prevailed. Retreat, he ordered, voice hoarse. He didn't need to say more. There was no glory in dying here. They weren't just outmatched, they were hopelessly, laughably outclassed. The Dragon Hunter pirates weren't a threat the Navy could handle with grit or numbers. They were a force of nature. And so, within moments, the Navy had vanished, like mist under the sun. Ryunosuke hovered silently for a moment before landing lightly on the ship of God. After all these years, still the same, came a voice, soft but piercing. Zoro froze. That voice, it couldn't be. He turned. There, standing on the deck, was a woman clad in black and white, her sword sheathed at her side. Her gaze was calm, sharp, familiar. Kuina. Zoro's voice barely carried, but everyone nearby heard the weight in those two syllables. For a few seconds, his face remained unreadable. Then, his eyes welled up. Tears spilled freely down his cheeks. He didn't sob. He didn't wail. He just stood there, trembling, as the impossible stood before him. Ryunosuke watched quietly, then turned to Mihawk. I'll let you two catch up. Hawkeye, come with me. We've got some things to discuss. Without another word, the two swordsmen leapt from the deck, disappearing into the distance like shadows cutting through the waves. Zoro stepped forward, still stunned. Kuina, I saw you die. You buried me, Kuina said softly, stepping closer. I know. Her eyes were distant for a moment, recalling the memory. But that funeral was staged. My father arranged everything. For reasons I couldn't explain then. Zoro clenched his fists. You were alive, all this time. I'm sorry, Zoro. I never wanted to leave you like that. Kuina's voice wavered slightly. But I'm glad. Glad to see that after all these years, you still cry for me. She smiled gently. Means our bond never broke. Then, without warning, she drew her sword. Zoro blinked, then smiled. So that's how it was. Now wasn't the time for grief or questions. Kuina was alive. That was all that mattered. And her aura, it was even sharper than before. I trained hard. For your share, too. He reached for his blades. You're looking at Zoro the Three Sword Master now, so don't blink. Drawing all 3 swords, Zoro placed a sword between his teeth. A wave of fighting spirit burst from his body like a storm. He would show her what his blades had become. Meanwhile, aboard Hawkeye's small boat. I assume you didn't pull me aside just to reminisce, Mihawk said flatly, arms crossed. I'm no longer a Shichibukai. Just another pirate now. Even facing Ryunosuke, Mihawk showed no fear. His eyes remained calm, his grip on the black sword firm. The pride of the world's strongest swordsman was not something so easily shaken. You're still Joracle Mihawk, aren't you? Ryunosuke asked. Mihawk nodded, cautious. That's right. Ryunosuke's gaze sharpened. Do you know a man named Jiraku Fugetsu? Jiraku is a Japanese romanized name of Dracul. For the first time in their conversation, Mihawk's expression cracked. That's my elder, he replied after a pause. Why are you asking about him? No grudge, Ryunosuke said calmly. We crossed paths once. Fought, of course. I've been curious ever since. Mihawk's brows furrowed. I don't know where he is, Mihawk said firmly, before Ryunosuke could ask. I only know, he was stronger than anyone I'd ever met. I wasn't even worthy to stand in his shadow. I see, Ryunosuke turned, preparing to leave. Then I'll give you a tip in return. Fugetsu might be on Raftel. Mihawk's breath caught. Raftel, the legendary final island, the place no one reached without a lifetime of trials. Before Mihawk could respond, Ryunosuke had vanished, vanishing into the horizon. Left behind, Mihawk stood alone under the sun, one hand tightening on his blade. The blade you gave me, old man, he whispered. Are you really still out there? Turning the rudder, Hawkeye changed course, toward the new world. Back aboard the ship of God, clang, bite, wham. Zoro and Kuina were already engaged in a fierce sparring match, their swords crashing with precision and speed few could follow. Ryunosuke landed beside Akame, arms crossed as he watched. They didn't waste time, huh? Akame nodded. Sister Kuina didn't even say hello, just drew her sword and charged. But it's not a real fight, she added, they're sparring. Ryunosuke smirked. This boy Zoro, still not strong enough. Lifelong rival, huh? As if on cue, Kuina's blade knocked one of Zoro's swords aside. Her follow-up slash stopped just short of his throat. Zoro's eyes widened. He chuckled, breathless, still as sharp as ever. Then he grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. Kuina, will you train with me again? I want to push even farther. All his life, Zoro had said he'd never lose again. But Kuina had always been the exception. His eternal rival. Of course, Kuina replied. Let's sharpen each other like before. Then, a high-pitched voice rang out. TCH, so you're leaving just like that? Not even gonna say goodbye to me properly? Zoro froze. Perona? Standing at the rail of the ship of God was a woman with bright hair, parasol twirling lazily above her head, and a face full of judgment. Zoro's shoulders slumped. Why are you here? Perona had grown, taller, sharper, more confident, but still had that same intense presence that made Zoro sweat bullets. To the crew, it looked like Zoro had just been caught red-handed by a jealous girlfriend. Snort. I want to go to the new world too. Take me with you. Perona hovered in midair with her arms crossed, pouting as she made her demand loud and clear. She didn't give Zoro a chance to object. Just barged in like it was the most natural thing in the world. You want to come to the new world? Zoro blinked, confused. Weren't you planning to stay behind? Why the sudden? Why do you care? Perona snapped. Wham! Before Zoro could finish, Perona zipped to his side and smacked him upside the head. And just like that, the two were at each other's throats, bickering like an old married couple. Honestly, with her temper and stubborn streak, Perona's Tsunere act fit her title of Ghost Princess perfectly. After their brief but chaotic exchange, Zoro, looking both tired and annoyed, approached Ryunosuke with a dark expression on his face. Captain Ryunosuke, can I? Sure, no problem, Ryunosuke replied casually, cutting him off before he could finish. My ship's huge, anyway. Zoro blinked, then gave a slow nod, thanks. This voyage had been dragging on in terms of entertainment. With these two comedic firecrackers on board, things were bound to be more lively. "Thank you, Captain Ryunosuke." Perona swooped in cheerfully. "I can cook. I won't be a freeloader like that moss-headed sword guy over there." She pointed dramatically at Zoro. "Captain, please don't kick Zoro off the ship," she added with exaggerated innocence. Zoro's face twitched as veins popped along his forehead. He looked seconds away from tossing her overboard. "It's fine," Ryunosuke said, chuckling. "I was headed that way anyway. Consider it on the way." Yeah, these two were a riot. Keeping them around wasn't just tolerable, it was a good decision. Later, the dragon hunter pirates docked at the Sabaody archipelago. While Najendo was busy guiding Perona and Zoro to their quarters, Akame approached Ryunosuke, her expression unreadable. "Brother Ryunosuke," she said quietly. "That girl, Perona, something feels off about her." Ryunosuke's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "That aura on her body," Akame continued, "it's strange. She wasn't just being paranoid." Akame had been by Ryunosuke's side for a long time, and her instincts rarely failed her. "I sensed it too," Ryunosuke replied calmly. "That aura. It's familiar, but I can't place its origin just yet." "So we wait and watch?" He nodded. "Exactly. No sudden moves until we know more." Akame gave a short nod. If Ryunosuke had picked up on it too, there was no need for panic. Still, her eyes didn't leave Perona's back as she walked away. The moment Perona had arrived, Ryunosuke had noticed it, that faint but familiar energy signature. At first, he'd thought it belonged to someone tied to the world government. The resemblance was uncanny. But seeing it came from Perona, with her usual flamboyant behavior, threw him off. Why would she be carrying that kind of aura? Regardless of her motives for joining the crew, now that she was aboard, she would be monitored closely. If problems arose, well, strength could solve a lot of problems. A few days passed. Perona settled into the rhythm of ship life surprisingly well. Zoro and Brook joined daily training sessions, while Perona, though mostly floating around and bickering, proved to be helpful in the kitchen. Despite everyone being bottomless pits when it came to food, supplies remained steady thanks to Ryunosuke's foresight. Then, as the sea breeze carried them ever closer to their next stop, a familiar name cropped up. "Captain, we're approaching Jaya Island," Najendo reported. "We need to restock. With how much these guys eat, especially Zoro, our supplies are running low, and the wine's nearly gone." Ryunosuke chuckled. "Let's drop anchor there. I've been meaning to check out something anyway." The mention of Jaya Island stirred a flicker of memory in him. Years ago, they'd passed through here on their way to Skypia. Back then, Ryunosuke had sensed something, a massive surge of life force, right in the center of the upwelling current. If something alive was causing that monstrous current, he had to know what it was. Captain Ryunosuke. Perona drifted into his line of sight, her little ghosts bobbing behind her like eerie balloons. "Have you been watching me?" "Yes." No hesitation, no attempt to deflect. "Why?" Perona asked, genuinely puzzled. The truth was, Perona had been confused since the moment she joined. Ryunosuke, the fierce and infamous captain of the dragon hunter pirates, had been observing her with unsettling focus. She'd racked her brain for a reason. Her conclusion? "Because I'm too cute?" Ryunosuke smiled faintly. "No, because there's a familiar aura around you." Before she could respond, a voice rang out from the crow's nest. "Captain! Pirate ship ahead!" Finks shouted. Judging by the structure, it looks like the old Thriller bark, the flagship of former warlord Gecko Moria. "Moria!" Ryunosuke blinked. "Moria!" Perona cried out at the same time. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, and then tears welled up. To Perona, Moria wasn't just a captain. He was family. She'd long believed he was dead, lost somewhere in the dark corners of the sea. She bolted to the railing, scanning the horizon with trembling hands. And sure enough, rising from the fog was that unmistakable silhouette, the eerie, triple-mast horror ship of nightmares. That familiar oppressive aura hit her chest like a cannonball. She clapped a hand over her mouth, and burst into tears. "Moria!" Ryunosuke narrowed his eyes. "Why here? Why now?" He knew Moria had survived, but the timing didn't add up. By all logic, Moria should have been deep in the New World, searching for his scattered crew. There was no way he could have known Perona was with the Dragon Hunter pirates. And yet, his observation hockey suddenly flared. There was someone else on that ship. A pulse of energy. A soul he had encountered once before. Blackbeard. His brows furrowed. Yes, Blackbeard was aboard Moria's ship. But the man Ryunosuke sensed was no longer alive. He was a zombie. Back in Mary Joie's, Blackbeard had ambushed him. But due to Ryunosuke's contract with time magic, the moment he activated it, Blackbeard had been obliterated, body, shadow, and all, leaving nothing behind. So how was he here? With Moria's sudden arrival, a sense of unease began to settle in Ryunosuke's mind. Something about it felt off, too coincidental, too convenient. Even seeing Blackbeard in zombified form didn't shake him much. If anything, it amused him. After all, Blackbeard had walked straight into his death back at the Holy Land. If Moria had scraped together a zombie version of him, then all he'd done was recycled trash. Blackbeard had always been a glutton for power. In the end, he just delivered himself on a silver platter. Besides, what stood before him now was just a walking corpse. A shell, and with the enhancement of the holy wings and the abilities he'd extracted from Meliodas, Ryunosuke no longer paid much attention to others' combat power. He was on a different level now. Captain Ryunosuke. Moria's deep, gruff voice called across the water. May I come aboard? So it really was Moria himself? Not a copy, not a messenger, but the former Shichibukai in the flesh. Oddly enough, the man was being polite. Of course, that was likely thanks to Ryunosuke's overwhelming strength. Still, the fact that Moria had come here personally and hadn't brought his whole crew was telling. You can, Ryunosuke replied casually. He already knew why Moria was here. Perona. Ryunosuke had no intention of stopping her if she wanted to leave. She had joined his crew only recently and she wasn't bound to him. Moments later, Moria stepped onto the deck alone. The Blackbeard zombie remained aboard the eerie three-masted thriller bark ship, anchored nearby. Captain, Perona squealed and flew straight into Moria's arms, throwing herself at his long neck with unrestrained joy. She twirled mid-air, her eyes bright, cheeks flushed, and her voice full of excitement. That joy, it couldn't be faked. Perona, I'm here to bring you back, Moria said gruffly, but there was warmth in his tone. But first, thank Captain Ryunosuke for looking after you. Oh, right. Perona turned, arms crossed and a smug little smile on her face. Thanks, I guess. Ryunosuke gave a faint chuckle. This girl really lives up to the ghost princess name. No problem, he said. But I do have one question, Captain Moria. Ryunosuke turned his gaze toward the figure on the other ship. Blackbeard, is he really dead? His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. The last time he encountered Blackbeard, the man had wielded the mythical Zone Dog fruit. Hellhound model, an ability that allowed him to survive death 3 times. And the final blow Ryunosuke dealt should have been the real one. Now, seeing him shambling about as a zombie, it didn't add up. Moria grinned darkly. He's not dead. What you're seeing is a puppet. I created it using someone else's corpse and imbued it with Blackbeard's shadow. That's why the aura seems real, it's only a fragment. Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed. So it wasn't truly Blackbeard's body, but it was close enough to make the hair on his neck stand up. After exchanging a few more words, Moria nodded and signaled to Perona. Together, they returned to Thriller Bark, and the ship slowly drifted away into the mist. As the eerie silhouette vanished into the horizon, Najenda approached Ryunosuke from behind. Captain, I know. Ryunosuke didn't turn, but his tone silenced her immediately. She glanced toward Zoro and Brook, who were laughing and training near the bow, then looked back at her captain with understanding in her eyes. They arrived at Jaya Island shortly after. Najenda quickly organized the crew to begin resupplying. With Zoro being the ship's #1 food vacuum, he was naturally conscripted into lugging crates. Eventually, only Najenda and Ryunosuke remained on board. Captain, she began, her voice low and cautious. Do you think someone on our ship leaked information? Her eyes narrowed. Could it be those 2 from the Straw Hat Pirates? She didn't have solid proof, But Moriya's timing, his words, and the presence of a Blackbeard puppet all made her uneasy. Moriya should have had no idea about the events at the Holy Land, let alone what happened to Blackbeard. "It's what I've been thinking too," Ryunosuke replied, arms crossed. "Moriya shouldn't know what happened between me and Blackbeard." But the way he spoke, it was like he knew more than he should. He knew too much. About us. About Perona. He looked out over the water, eyes sharp with thought. Moriya's objective wasn't just Perona. He wouldn't risk crossing me unless he had a reason. Either someone's feeding him intel, or Perona herself is connected to something bigger. Nagenda's brows furrowed. Because of her aura? Yes. It's faint, but it's pure. The same type of energy I sensed in certain world government agents. It's subtle, but I'd bet my blade it's connected. "Do you want me to investigate?" she asked immediately. Ryunosuke nodded. "Get Crollo on it. I want to know everything about Moriya's movements, and Perona's past." Nagenda saluted and turned to handle the orders. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke retrieved his Den Mushi and spun the dial. Beru. 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 Click. Finally. "You're calling," came Morgan's enthusiastic squawk. "Captain Ryunosuke, what's the word? Ready to make headlines again?" The giant newsbird hadn't heard from Ryunosuke in months. With the dragon hunter pirates off the grid, the seas had grown boring, stale, even. The thrill had vanished. "Has Moriya contacted you?" Ryunosuke asked, skipping all pleasantries. "To buy information on me?" "Moriya?" Morgan sounded stunned. "You mean Gecko Moriya, the washed-up warlord who vanished after the government blacklisted him?" "That's the one," Ryunosuke replied. Morgans quickly rustled through papers and squawked instructions to his news crows. After a pause, he answered. "No, not a peep from him. He hasn't tried to buy intel on you, or anyone." "Then has anyone been buying information about me lately?" Ryunosuke pressed. "Of course. The world government's been buying your intel non-stop. The Navy too, mainly for tracking your movements." Morgan sighed dramatically. "You really do know how to stir the ocean, don't you?" Ryunosuke frowned slightly. If Moriya hadn't bought the information directly, then either someone had handed it to him, or something else was going on entirely. "You're near Jaya Island, right?" Morgans added, flipping through the latest data. "Just so happens, Moriya's ship was spotted in those waters not long ago." "A coincidence?" "Doubtful. That guy's up to something," Ryunosuke muttered. "Keep tracking his movements. He's going to slip, and when he does, I want to know immediately." "You got it," Morgans replied. "He's not the only shadow moving these days, you know. The new world's heating up again." Ryunosuke cut in. "One more thing." "Yeah? Has Blackbeard, the real one, shown up anywhere?" After his brief conversation with Morgans, Ryunosuke had gotten most of the answers he wanted. The world economy news was still powerful. Even if some sensitive or missing intel remained out of reach, Morgans always had eyes everywhere. What couldn't be learned through him would now fall to Crollo's intelligence squad and the Dragon Hunter pirates' own agents. "Captain, Crollo has been contacted," Nagenda reported swiftly, approaching with her usual calm efficiency. "They're in the New World chasing a special item, but they'll rendezvous with Morgans soon. Once they have Moriya's confirmed location, the investigation begins." She paused for a breath, then added, "Also, I've just heard from the 4th Division. Captain Meliodas reported they found a map. The location marked is somewhere along the Grand Line. They're en route now." "Got it," Ryunosuke nodded. Right now, the fragments of intel were too few to piece together the larger puzzle. There was no need to make any bold moves yet. "Nagenda, I'm leaving things in your hands for now," he said, turning to the first officer. "I'll be gone for a while." And with that, Ryunosuke unfolded his holy wings and soared into the sky, vanishing in a streak of divine light. His destination was a small, weathered house perched by the sea, home of the famed explorer, Mont Blanc. Last time, after the Dragon Hunter pirates rang the Golden Bell, the existence of the Sky Island and the fabled Golden City had been confirmed. With his lifelong dream realized, Mont Blanc no longer needed to dive dangerously into the deep to chase myths. His younger brothers had taken over the salvage work while he enjoyed a quieter life. "Mont Blanc," Ryunosuke called out cheerfully as he landed outside the house. Within moments, the door swung open, and Mont Blanc hurried out, eyes widening with surprise. Ryunosuke, you're alive. You don't look hurt either, that's a relief. Mont Blanc's expression shifted from shock to sheer delight. The last he'd heard, Ryunosuke and his crew were headed into a direct clash with the world government. The rumors had left him anxious for months. Ha ha ha. We're all fine, Ryunosuke laughed, waving a hand. By the way, you look much healthier now. You're not still sneaking out to sea, are you? If Maki catches you diving again, she's going to beat you senseless. The two shared a hearty laugh as they entered the cozy home. Mont Blanc prepared tea while Ryunosuke got to the point. I came back because I want to revisit the sea where the upwelling current appears. Can you take me there? Mont Blanc blinked in surprise. Upwelling current? You're going back to Sky Island? Ryunosuke shook his head. No, not Sky Island. And I don't need the current itself. I just need to reach that part of the sea again. While he could have flown over the area himself, that would risk attention and waste time. Getting help from someone familiar with these waters was the smarter move. I see, Mont Blanc said after a pause. Alright then. I've been raising some guide birds. We can use them to reach the site. Thank you, Ryunosuke nodded. They made their way to Mont Blanc's small boat, where a proud, puffed-up compass bird stood at the helm. It gave Ryunosuke a defiant glare. He chuckled. Why does this bird remind me of Perona? With the guide bird leading the way, they sailed into open water. Mont Blanc, having spent years exploring this area, quickly identified the direction. Splash! Suddenly, Mont Blanc dove into the sea to double-check their position. Though he remembered the general area, the lack of landmarks on the water made precise navigation difficult. Moments later, he surfaced. Not yet, we're close, but still a bit ahead. He climbed aboard, catching his breath. Captain Ryunosuke, aren't you supposed to be in the New World? Why come back to the Grand Line? It was a valid question. Pirates didn't backtrack often. Those aiming for fame, treasure, or the Pirate King's title typically pushed forward, toward the New World. Returning to these waters was rare, unless there was something important involved. I had business in the East Blue, Ryunosuke replied. Also, one of my crewmates from the Grand Line landed in Sabaody recently. We met up there. Mont Blanc nodded slowly, still a bit puzzled. As the boat moved steadily through the waves, the sea suddenly began to shift. Large bubbles broke the surface, growing in size until they resembled enormous domes, like stars rising from the deep. Mont Blanc leaned over the edge, eyes narrowing. What's happening here? The bubbles multiplied, roiling across the surface like something was stirring beneath. Captain Ryunosuke, he barked, we need to back off. There's an upwelling current forming, and fast, his voice held a note of panic. But why now? He muttered to himself. There were no signs of one forming recently. Mont Blanc knew these waters like the back of his hand. He could predict the currents almost to the day. But this surge had come out of nowhere. Without hesitation, he turned the ship away and began steering it to safety. FWIP. Ryunosuke unfolded his wings again. I'll check it out myself, he said calmly. You can head back, or stay nearby, just don't get too close. And without another word, he dove straight into the ocean's depths. Mont Blanc barely had time to react. Wait, Ryunosuke. But it was too late. He watched in stunned silence as Ryunosuke vanished into the blue. He didn't even question the wings anymore. At that moment, the sea let out a low, thunderous roar. A torrent of water exploded upward, far stronger than any upwelling current he'd ever seen. It shot into the sky like a reversed waterfall, carrying pressure that could smash a battleship in seconds. Mont Blanc's face went pale. This one's different, there were no warning signs at all. And the power, it's far greater than before. His heart thudded with unease as he watched the chaos unfold from a safe distance. Captain Ryunosuke, please be all right down there. Even as a seasoned sailor, Mont Blanc knew better than to trust the sea's mood. Against the ocean's wrath, even monsters could drown. The currents surged around him with a terrifying force, pulling everything into the heart of an underwater vortex. Yet, Ryunosuke didn't resist. He allowed himself to be dragged along, his body perfectly in sync with the rhythm of the sea. As the one chosen by Poseidon, the joy boy, Ryunosuke shared an innate bond with the water. If he truly wished, this level of current wouldn't be able to budge him an inch. But right now, he had no reason to resist. He was looking for something, and he had just found it. At the center of the underwater vortex, the storm's eye opened like a gaping maw. Within it pulsed a strange force, and Ryunosuke's senses sharpened. The same presence he'd detected earlier flared back to life, massive, ancient, alive. Puff! Ryunosuke passed through what felt like a thin membrane. A faint shimmer rippled around him as he entered another space entirely. The chaotic currents outside vanished instantly, replaced by a calm, otherworldly silence. And before him floated a colossal creature. It loomed in the darkness like a submerged mountain. Even compared to the giant lanternfish Ryunosuke had encountered in the New World, this beast was far bigger, monstrous in scale, ancient in presence. What drew his attention most, though, was the powerful current still gushing from the creature's body. Upon closer inspection, Ryunosuke realized it came from the beast's blowhole. This terrifying whirlpool was merely its breath. Human? A deep, thunderous voice boomed directly into his mind. It didn't echo through the water, it bypassed sound entirely. You're speaking? Ryunosuke blinked. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have awakened the ability to hear all things. Congratulations, host. You have been recognized by the Undersea Overlord, Yalaw, reputation 10,000. Ryunosuke's eyes widened. The observation haki he'd trained tirelessly, the one that refused to break through, had just awakened to a higher level. He could now hear the voice of the world itself. You bear the scent of divinity, the creature continued, voice clearer now. You have been chosen by Poseidon. You can sense that? Ryunosuke asked, intrigued. If so, please, the creature pleaded, help me. This took Ryunosuke aback. The system had called this creature the Undersea Overlord, a being of unfathomable strength. A myth even in the New World's strangest tales. Why would something like this need help? I'm Ryunosuke, Joy Boy of Poseidon, he replied slowly. If there's something I can do to help, I'm willing to hear it out. But what exactly are you doing down here? And why generate such violent currents? This, the creature rumbled, is not by my will. Long ago, a woman named Sester placed me under a command I cannot disobey. I've been trapped in this place ever since. A woman? Ryunosuke frowned. Yes. I cannot move. I cannot stop breathing. All I can do is wait. It reminded Ryunosuke of Zo, the island carried by the massive elephant Zunesha. That ancient beast too was bound by some unknown command, fated to wander the seas. And now this undersea overlord, Yalaw, was in the same situation. Are there more like you? Ryunosuke murmured. Could all these ancient creatures be pawns in someone else's plan? What do you need from Poseidon? He asked aloud. If she must sacrifice herself, I won't allow it. There is no need for sacrifice, the creature replied. I merely need to be renamed. Only through that can the command binding me be lifted. Renamed? Ryunosuke raised an eyebrow. You need a new name to break free? Yes. And as the chosen one of Poseidon, you have that power too. If you name me, I will be freed. And in return, I will owe you a great debt. I will serve you loyally. The world truly had gone mad. First it was elephant lords carrying islands, now renaming sea monsters could break ancient seals? Still, it was better than blood rituals. Ryunosuke crossed his arms, staring at the massive beast before him. Fine, he said at last. From now on, your name will be Kun. The name echoed through the ocean like a drumbeat. Suddenly, the sea trembled. A strange glow radiated from Ryunosuke's right hand, and a golden character, Kun, etched itself onto the back of it before fading beneath the skin. It didn't hurt, but the sensation was heavy, symbolic. Ryunosuke grumbled. I'm not trying to look like a gangster here. I hear and obey, the creature, now Kun, declared solemnly. Your word is law. I will no longer remain still. Ryunosuke gave a faint nod. Good. For now, follow me. We're heading to the New World. I also need to meet with Shirahoshi. Understood, Master Joyboy. With a gentle yet enormous motion, Kun slid beneath Ryunosuke and carried him upward, cutting through the sea like a torpedo. Despite his size, Kun was astoundingly fast. Bang! Within seconds, Ryunosuke burst through the surface and hovered over the ocean on Kun's back. Off in the distance, the familiar silhouette of Mont Blanc's ship bobbed patiently on the waves. Ryunosuke had expected Mont Blanc to leave by now, but clearly the old explorer was more persistent than he looked. Guiding Kun over, Ryunosuke jumped off and landed on deck. "Mont Blanc," he greeted, "I found what I was looking for." "You made it back alive," Mont Blanc exhaled in relief, though his expression remained a little dazed as he glanced toward the massive shadow beneath the waves. "As thanks for your help, take this." Ryunosuke tossed over a small pouch, heavy with golden trinkets from the legendary Golden Country. "Use it well. You can head back now." Kulike opened the pouch, eyes wide at the gleaming contents. For a moment, he was speechless. By the time he looked up again, Ryunosuke was already disappearing into the sea atop his new companion. He didn't chase after him. He knew better. Whatever battles awaited the dragon hunter pirates, they were far beyond his world. Ryunosuke soon returned to the port of Jaya Island. Due to the shallow harbor, Kun remained out at sea. Ryunosuke disembarked alone and boarded the ship of the gods once more. "Captain, you," Natasha blinked in surprise, watching him approach from the opposite direction. "I've recruited a new crew member," Ryunosuke said casually as he stepped aboard. "I'll introduce him later." He glanced around and noticed the ship was nearly loaded. "How much longer until we're fully stocked?" he asked. "Just a few more hours," Natasha replied, then tilted her head with curiosity. "This new crew member, are we talking about someone special?" Najenda, standing nearby, folded her arms and looked thoughtful. "For you to personally recruit them, they must be something else. Where are they, by the way?" Everyone was wondering the same thing. Ryunosuke had returned alone. "He's not human," Ryunosuke answered simply. "I'm going to get some rest. Let me know when we're ready to depart." With that, he turned and headed to his cabin, fatigue tugging at his limbs. Ever since naming Kun, an odd weariness had settled over him, one that seemed to seep into his very soul. The moment he lay down, sleep claimed him. "Joy boy, joy boy." A soft, echoing voice whispered through the void. "HN?" Ryunosuke stirred. That voice, was that Shirahoshi? But when he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a vast, empty white world. No ocean, no ship, no crew. Only silence, and a glow of blue light up ahead. "A dream?" he murmured, confused. He hadn't dreamed in a long time. Ever since his voyage began, his nights had been silent, heavy with exhaustion. But this was different. Drawn to the blue light, he walked forward. As he approached, a woman emerged from the glow, beautiful, graceful, with the same aura as Shirahoshi, but older, wiser. "Not Shirahoshi," Ryunosuke muttered. "But you feel the same. Are you, the previous Poseidon?" The woman smiled gently. "Hello, Joy Boy. I am Poseidon, first of the Poseidon. You may call me Sester." The name jolted Ryunosuke's memory. Kun had mentioned it. This was the one who had bound him beneath the sea. "Why did you summon me?" he asked cautiously. Sester's expression turned serious. "Beneath the red line, there are those in need of rescue. Their freedom is tied to you and the new Poseidon. I can no longer act, but you can." She extended her hand, and a radiant blue gem appeared, its glow pulsing like a living heart. "This is the heart of the ocean. You'll need it when the time comes." Ryunosuke's eyes widened. The energy radiating from the gem was unmistakable. This is an infinity stone. Though different from the infinite white stone he'd encountered before, it possessed the same ancient, pure energy. He could feel it down to his bones. "You already understand its significance," Sester said calmly. "Then I need not explain its power." She took a step back, her figure beginning to blur into mist. "Remember, Joy Boy, beneath the line lies a truth buried too long." Before she could finish, the mist closed in, swallowing everything. "Captain, Captain, Brother Ryunosuke," multiple voices drifted into his ears, pulling him from the fog of sleep. Ryunosuke groaned and slowly opened his eyes. Akame and Kuina were leaning over him, concern etched on their faces. "I fell asleep," he muttered, rubbing his temples. A wave of dizziness washed over him. This fatigue wasn't just physical, It felt like his soul had been wrung dry. Not even after the war with the world government had he felt this drained. "Brother Ryunosuke, are you alright?" Akame asked softly. Then her face brightened with mischief. "You look pale, don't tell me, are you pregnant?" "Wah!" Kuina blinked in confusion, then burst into laughter like a wind chime in spring. Ryunosuke, on the other hand, wore the face of a man deeply betrayed by his own crew's sense of humor. "What's going on in that head of yours?" he muttered with a sigh. "I'm fine. Just a little groggy," he said, trying to shake off the lingering haze. He lifted his hand to run through his hair, only to pause. A gem was resting in his palm, the heart of the ocean. And the glowing mark of Kun that had been etched on the back of his hand, it had vanished. Had Sester's energy been embedded in that mark? Was it the link that pulled him into that dream? Memories of the vision came rushing back. At that moment, Kuina spoke up. "Sister Najenda said we're ready to leave. She sent us to wake you. You were sleeping like a log." Ryunosuke nodded. "All right. Let's head out." He slipped the heart of the ocean into his system space and followed the two out of the cabin. The ship of the gods had already set sail. On deck, the wind was brisk and the crew gathered as Ryunosuke called out. "Everyone, gather around, I've got a surprise for you." "A surprise?" murmured Natasha. The crew assembled, eyes curious. Even Zoro wandered over, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Boom! The surface of the sea exploded as Kun rose from the depths, his massive form casting a shadow over the ship. The crew stared in awe as the undersea overlord emerged. "This," Ryunosuke said with a grin, "is our new crew member, Kun." Woo-ah! Akame's jaw dropped. Then, in the next breath, she pulled out a dinner knife with sparkles in her eyes. "Brother Ryunosuke, are we eating him?" Ryunosuke's face went stiff. No, that's Kun. He's joining us on our journey." Kun, who had been happily surfacing to meet the crew, suddenly stiffened at the sound of eating and gave Ryunosuke a betrayed look with his massive eyes. The poor guy had been summoned for friendship, not fine dining. "Crew member," Akame lowered her knife with a pout. "Ah, what a waste." The others laughed, and even Kuina chuckled behind her hand. Despite the bizarre introduction, the crew welcomed Kun with open arms and empty stomachs. With some disappointment, with Kun now part of the crew, the ship of the gods underwent a subtle transformation. It was no longer powered by the drain of rare energy resources or infinity stones. Instead, Kun's sheer speed and strength in the ocean made him the ship's new engine. And the best part? He required no fuel, just intent. Ryunosuke had given Kun a few basic instructions, and soon after, Nijiko was able to communicate with him fluently. The two got along well. So much so that Nijiko made Kun's massive head her command post, riding up there to guide their journey directly. After several smooth days, the crew reached the outskirts of the Sea of Amadoa. "Captain, we'll be arriving at the Sabaody archipelago in 3 days," Najenda reported as she examined a spread of intelligence papers. "Lately, the Navy's been unusually active. Reports are pouring in from everywhere. It's looking like the purge of the 7 warlords of the sea is already underway." She furrowed her brows. "But that doesn't make sense. Neither the Navy nor the world government usually acts this aggressively. If they want to solidify their power, wouldn't it be more effective to focus on the 4 emperors instead?" Ryunosuke smirked as he leaned on the railing. The purge of the Shichibukai was a mistake from the start. Using pirates to control other pirates? Short-sighted. He crossed his arms, eyes narrowed toward the horizon. This latest move isn't the Navy's initiative. It's a statement. A power play orchestrated by the world government to give the Navy room to breathe. But don't confuse the two. The real leaders at the top of the world government, they don't care about these games. Najenda tilted her head. But wouldn't that contradict their interests? Without the heavenly tribute, they don't have a stable income. If they alienate their allies, who'll fund them? "You're assuming they need the heavenly tribute," Ryunosuke replied calmly. "But the world government has deep roots." He turned, looking over his shoulder. The kingdom of Daikono, for example, one of their allies, sits atop 3 massive mineral veins. Every year, their tribute is all rare metals. Metals Doflamingo once traded in bulk. He gestured casually. Then there's the Kingdom of Baiklov, 46 islands under one flag, different climates, year-round harvests, exports that feed nations, all under the control of the world government. He listed several more examples, each one revealing just how vast the shadow of the world government truly was. Food, metal, textiles, weapons. They had their claws in every corner of the global economy. The heavenly tribute is just smoke and mirrors, he said at last. A distraction. The real money flows underground. I was going to suggest passing this intel to the Revolutionary Army, Najenda murmured, but Ryunosuke raised a hand to stop her. I've already sent it. On the sea, not every war needed to be fought directly. Sometimes, the smartest move was to let others strike the blow. Najenda nodded and turned to handle logistics, while Ryunosuke remained on the deck. Moments later, Akahime and Kuina walked up to him. Brother Ryunosuke, are we going to see the Straw Hats this time? Akame asked, eyes sparkling with excitement. Ryunosuke smiled. Haven't seen those knuckleheads in a while. Curious to see how much Luffy's improved. Then he looked to Kuina and Zoro's swordsmanship. Kuina crossed her arms and frowned thoughtfully. He's improved. Started developing his own techniques again. But he's been too heavily influenced by Mihawk. I've been working to steer him back to his own path. She let out a sigh. Zoro uses 3 swords. But lately, it feels like he's trying to fight like a one-sword swordsman. That's not who he is. If he continues to follow Mihawk's style, he'll never reach his full potential. Ryunosuke nodded. Then keep pushing him. He needs to find his way. He was about to say more when, brother, a familiar voice burst across the sea, followed by a surge of intense heat. Boom! A figure shot down from the sky and landed hard on the deck, flames dancing off his shoulders. Ace! Ryunosuke stared at him in shock. What the hell are you doing here? Ace scratched his head sheepishly. Hee. I heard you went out to sea again. Thought I'd come find you. Looked around East Blue, didn't see your ship, so I kept chasing your trail until I finally caught up. He grinned, then, goo 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 goo, his stomach rumbled like an engine. Ha ha. Still the same bottomless pit, Ryunosuke chuckled. Come on. We're heading to meet Luffy. I hear the brat's grown stronger. As he led Ace inside, Kuina and Akame headed off to prepare food. Seated on the deck, Ryunosuke poured 2 cups of tea. How's Whitebeard's health? He asked, and let me see how your flames developed. Ace lifted his palm, a white flame igniting instantly. But this time, there was a streak of green within it, and a hint of that familiar blue remained in its core. Pop's doing well, Ace said confidently. There haven't been any major battles lately. As long as he rests properly, he should be fine. Now it's our turn to fight. Ryunosuke studied the flame carefully. It was several times more potent than before, more stable, more alive. Not bad at all, he said with a smile. If you keep pushing, once your flame awakens, even a top-tier magma user won't be able to suppress you. Ace laughed, but then, his expression shifted. His gaze dropped, and his voice lowered. Brother, I need to ask you something. Ryunosuke raised an eyebrow. What's with the serious face? Don't tell me, you're getting married. Wah. No, Ace waved his hands furiously, turning red. It's not that. He hesitated. It's Pops. He wants me to inherit the Whitebeard pirates. The words hung in the air like a heavy anchor dropped to the ocean floor. Ryunosuke's smile faded as he leaned back, letting the weight of the statement sink in. I see. Ryunosuke was silent for a moment after hearing Ace's words. Whitebeard wanting Ace to inherit the Whitebeard pirates? That didn't surprise him in the slightest. After all, Whitebeard knew Ace's lineage. As the son of Gold D. Roger, Whitebeard's greatest rival, it made perfect sense for Edward Newgate to place his hopes on Ace. It was poetic, in a way. Fitting. And beyond bloodlines, Ace had the strength to match. He wielded all 3 forms of haki, observation, armament, and even conquerors. Not to mention, Ace was his little brother. The younger brother of Ryunosuke, the captain of the Dragon Hunter Pirates. With identity, strength, heritage, and character on his side, what more could anyone want from a successor? Honestly, Ryunosuke would have found it strange if Whitebeard had chosen anyone else. But the look on Ace's face said it all. He wasn't excited, He wasn't proud, he was troubled. "Brother, why aren't you saying anything?" Ace asked nervously. "Do you also think it's outrageous?" "Outrageous?" Ryunosuke blinked, then grinned. "Not at all. I think it's completely reasonable." He crossed his arms. "If anything, I'm wondering why you're not thrilled about it. Don't tell me, you lack confidence?" Ryunosuke's smile turned teasing. "If you're not sure, why don't you just quit the Whitebeard Pirates and join the Dragon Hunter Pirates? You can start from the bottom. I've got nothing to inherit, but I've got plenty of work." Ace chuckled awkwardly but still looked uncertain. "When I joined the Whitebeard Pirates, I was just some rookie," Ace muttered. "Marco's been with Pops since the beginning. He's the first division commander. I'm just the second." He trailed off. Ryunosuke immediately understood. Ace wasn't worried about leading, he was worried about deserving to lead. Ace respected Marco, admired him, even, and most importantly, he felt like he was cutting in line. "Marco, the others, they were there long before me. I feel like I'd be stealing something if I accepted this," Ace confessed. "And honestly, I don't know if I'm ready. I couldn't even keep the Spade Pirates in check when I first set out." His voice faltered. Ryunosuke didn't interrupt. Sometimes, doubts were best spoken aloud before they could be crushed. "I didn't come here to run away," Ace said after a pause. "I came to ask you, what should I do?" Ryunosuke finally leaned forward and looked Ace in the eye. "Ace," he said seriously, "let me ask you something. Do you really think the others can lead the Whitebeard Pirates better than you?" Ace opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You're thinking about Marco, right?" Ryunosuke continued. Ace slowly nodded. "Listen," Ryunosuke said, voice calm but firm. "Marco's been around forever. He's strong, smart, mythical zone-type devil fruit user. On paper, he's perfect." Ace nodded again, "But he's not fit to be captain." That made Ace blink. "What?" I said, "he's not fit to be captain." "Why?" Ace asked, eyes narrowing, though not in anger, only confusion. Ryunosuke smiled faintly. That was the reaction he was hoping for. Ace hadn't denied it, he was seeking clarity, not conflict. "Because he's the ship's doctor." "Huh?" "Marco is more of a caretaker than a leader. His instinct is to heal, not command. He thinks about how to save his crewmates, not how to lead them into uncharted waters. That's not a flaw, but it limits him." Ryunosuke continued. "Second, Marco doesn't have the fire to push the Whitebeard Pirates forward. He maintains. He protects. But a captain needs to drive the crew, not just guide them. Third," he looked Ace dead in the eyes, "I just don't think he's the right one." Ace frowned. "That's subjective." "Of course it is," Ryunosuke replied with a smirk. "And do you know why I feel that way?" "Why?" "Because you're my little brother," Ryunosuke said, his voice filled with conviction. "And as your big brother, I'll support you, no matter what. I don't care if the whole world disagrees." Ace froze. A strange warmth spread across his chest. That was it. That was the piece he had been missing. Whitebeard hadn't chosen him just because of Roger, or even because of his strength. He had chosen Ace because if Ace inherited the Whitebeard Pirates, then the Dragon Hunter Pirates, led by Ryunosuke, would stand with them without hesitation. It was a strategic choice. A family choice. If Marco inherited the crew, Ryunosuke might help as a favor, but that would be the end of it. But with Ace, they would become one of the strongest allied forces on the sea. Ryunosuke leaned back. "That's why I gave you that third reason, because you matter, and Whitebeard knew that." Ace exhaled, a slow, deep breath. "I get it now," he said quietly. Goo 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 goo," Ace's stomach rumbled again. "Let's start with food, yeah?" came Kuina's voice as she and Akame arrived carrying trays. "We figured this talk would go long," Akame added with a wink. "Thanks, sisters-in-law." Ace grinned brightly and dug in like a starving animal. He hadn't eaten or slept properly for days. The weight of Whitebeard's offer had been gnawing at him like a parasite. Now that the burden was gone, it was like a switch flipped in his stomach. Huff, before long, halfway through his meal, Ace slumped over the table, fast asleep, crumbs still on his cheek. Kuina blinked. "He's out," Akame chuckled. Ryunosuke waved a hand lazily. "He does that. Let him sleep." He looked down at Ace with a small smile. The storm in his brother's heart had finally passed. And now, it was time to head for the Sabaody archipelago. After that brief emotional storm, Ace quickly returned to his usual self, eating, laughing, and blending seamlessly with the crew. Once he'd reunited with Zoro and Brook, he realized Ryunosuke had been serious about meeting up with the Straw Hats. Without hesitation, Ace joined the training group on board. As an old acquaintance of the Dragon Hunter pirates, he fit in like a well-worn glove, no tension, no barriers. Soon, the ship of the gods arrived at the Sabaody archipelago. But the archipelago wasn't the same place it had once been. Ever since the Dragon Hunter pirates had disrupted the slave trade here, the island's economy had taken a nosedive. Gone were the days of thriving, opulent decadence funded by human misery. Yet despite the loss of wealth, the archipelago remained an essential gateway to the New World, drawing pirates in droves. The moment they docked, Zoro leapt off the ship with barely a word. Shi, I'll go ahead," he shouted mid-run, vanishing down the street like a green-haired bullet. Brook, ever the gentleman, gave a polite bow. "Thank you for the ride, my friends. Now, it's time for a yo-ho-ho reunion," and with that, he left to find the Straw Hat crew. Ryunosuke didn't stop them. This was their moment. "Najenda, I'll leave the arrangements here to you," Ryunosuke said, glancing toward the dock. "I'm going to find Rayleigh. Ace, you're with me." "Got it, Captain," Najenda replied, already slipping into command mode. "With Kun here, we won't need to coat the ship. I'll start gathering supplies and secure a temporary base." This stretch of the Grand Line had been unusually calm. No major encounters. No serious threats. A few pirates had tried their luck, but they'd been obliterated before the crew even broke a sweat. As for the Navy or the world government, they were keeping their distance, for now. But Ryunosuke could feel it. Things were building towards something. The New World was where the real storm awaited. A short while later, Ryunosuke and Ace arrived at Shaki's Rip-Off Bar. The familiar scent of cigars and old rum wafted through the air. Well, Captain Ryunosuke. I didn't expect you to visit me first," Shaki said with a smirk. "And you brought the Fire Fist himself. Whitebeard's 2nd Division captain, what can I do for you too?" Her tone was playful, but Ryunosuke noticed something else, the way her eyes narrowed slightly. She could feel it. His presence had grown heavier, more commanding. The man standing in front of her was no longer just a rising pirate captain, he was a force. "I'm here to see Uncle Rayleigh," Ryunosuke said simply. "Is he in?" "He hasn't, 50 million berries." Ryunosuke dropped a large box on the counter without waiting for her to finish. "I'll give him a call." Shaki snatched up the box faster than lightning. After a short communication, she returned. "He'll be back by tomorrow. Said he's doing a favor for an old friend." Ryunosuke nodded. "Good. I'll wait," then his eyes sharpened. "Sister Shaki, has the world government been doing anything odd lately?" he asked. "I noticed quite a few celestial dragons wandering around. That's rare." Ace, beside him, kept his hood low. Like Ryunosuke, he wasn't in the mood to draw attention. Thanks to Kun swallowing their ship the moment they entered port, no one had realized the Dragon Hunter pirates had landed. Shaki raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know? The auction house has reopened." Ryunosuke's expression darkened. "Today's the slave auction," she added, voice grim. "Honestly, I thought that was why you came." It wasn't. He had no idea. "The auction house is still standing," he muttered. "It's in the same spot as always. By now, they've probably finished delivering all the merchandise. If they catch wind that you're on the island, though, the auction's as good as cancelled." But as Shaki kept talking, she blinked. "Huh? Where'd they go?" Ryunosuke and Ace had already vanished. "Impatient little devils," she sighed. "Brother," Ace said as they moved through the shaded streets, "why do you always step into these things?" He wasn't criticizing, he was genuinely curious. "You hate the celestial dragons, sure. That's easy to understand. But is this about the slaves? Pity? Anger?" Ryunosuke chuckled. "Good reputation. You buying that?" Ace gave him a flat look. "You really expect me to believe that?" Even the people Ryunosuke had saved didn't always trust him. He was a pirate, feared, hated, and idolized in equal measure. So why act like a hero when the world had already branded him a villain? Don't you think it's strange? Ryunosuke asked as they walked. The world calls us monsters, but we're the ones tearing down the system they built. Ace didn't respond, because deep down, he knew Ryunosuke was right. Ryunosuke continued, it's not about justice. It's not even about vengeance. It's just about the numbers. Numbers? Reputation points, Ryunosuke said with a grin. Most of the powerful folks already know who we are. Can't earn much more from them. So now, we focus on the common people. Make them believe. Ace let out a low whistle. You're even more calculating than I thought. Guilty, Ryunosuke said without remorse. They reached the edge of the auction grounds. Ryunosuke activated his observation haki and spread it like a web. He instantly picked up the targets, dozens of people in cages, guarded by armed soldiers. More importantly, 4 distinct presences reeked of arrogance and corruption. Celestial dragons. They're really here, Ryunosuke muttered. Probably suffocating up in Mariajoy. Came down here to play God again. This auction won't just be about slaves, he added. They're probably using it as a sick form of entertainment. Brother, Ace said, glancing at him, you planning to burn the whole place down? Ryunosuke turned to him, eyes calm, up to you. Huh? This is your decision. You're the future captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. You have the right to act on your beliefs. Ace smirked. You think I'd let you have all the fun? His conqueror's haki flared subtly. I might not hate the celestial dragons the way you do, he said, voice low. But I hate what they stand for. I'm not doing this for revenge or pity. I'm doing this to keep the name, Whitebeard, where it belongs. Ryunosuke grinned. Then let's show them what brothers can do. News traveled fast, so fast that it reached Naruto before dawn. Once informed, she wasted no time activating the night raid team. The celestial dragons. It seemed that chaos from the last encounter hadn't been enough to wake them from their delusions. This time, Ryunosuke had issued a direct order, and even Morgan's news coup had brought along a specialized film and television dendenmushi. Naruto immediately understood what Ryunosuke planned to do next. The following night, the auction house once again buzzed with vile opulence, its operations proceeding with clockwork precision, just as they had before the chaos. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke had quietly eliminated a noble and stolen his invitation. With Ace at his side, the two entered the auction hall unnoticed. Do you really think they're putting women from special races up for sale this time? Someone whispered behind them. I don't care, another voice muttered. I've already got a batch of fighters trained. One of them even knows how to wield a sword. I'm just here for the weapons. TCH. Weapons, soldiers, slaves. In the end, we all serve the world government scraps. Powerful my ass. A group of nobles lounged in the hall, chatting with smug disregard for the world outside. They dared to speak freely only because the celestial dragons weren't among them in the main hall. They remained sealed away in private luxury boxes, aloof and unseen. The nobles here were no saints either. Most of them shared the same crooked interests, so within this circle, frustrations with the world government flowed like wine. Though they bowed and scraped in public, in private they cursed the very system they served. Brother, Ace whispered, eyes narrowing. This auction, it's more than just slaves, isn't it? When do we make our move? Ryunosuke leaned back in his seat, voice calm and amused. Patience. Let the stars of tonight's show arrive first. He smirked. And just so you know, it wasn't me who invited Morgans this time. Ace raised an eyebrow. You didn't? Nope. The nobles wanted publicity. They invited Morgan's news coup themselves, thinking he'd broadcast their little event to the whole world. And they're using a special visual dendenmushi network to stream it. Ace blinked. So they're holding a remote auction? That's a thing now? It is, Ryunosuke replied. And it's exactly why this is going to be fun. Despite the growing instability across the seas, many nobles had still come. Those greedy enough to brave the waters just to purchase government-certified slaves. After all, once these slaves were marked and bought through this auction, the world government would acknowledge them as personal property. Even if they were stolen or escaped, they'd still be considered property by law. It was a sick system, but one that gave the auction great appeal. Is this some kind of scheme by the world government? Ace asked, puzzled. Why would they go to all this trouble? Ryunosuke chuckled. The world government gave the nod, sure, but the celestial dragons are the ones playing puppet masters. And with Morgan's birds involved, this is their way of bragging about their control. Ace's fists clenched instinctively. He hated every inch of this twisted reality. Still, he knew this wasn't the time to blow their cover. The real fireworks hadn't even started. As time crept on, the hall grew louder. More nobles arrived, draped in jewels, soaked in perfume, flaunting their entitlement like a second skin. The auction house, freshly rebuilt and even grander than before, seemed to glow under the chandeliers. It had even expanded, with more chambers, more cages, and more suffering. The auction house owner wore a delighted smile as he bowed deeply to the smug man beside him. St. Charlos, everything is in place, he reported eagerly. We expect tonight's earnings to exceed 10 billion berries. If we pull this off, we could replicate this format across the sea. Remote auctions everywhere. Once it's done, I'm certain you'll be rewarded handsomely. St. Charlos leaned back in his gilded chair, dressed in absurd layers of silk and fur. His expression, though ridiculous on the surface, twisted into something darker and more calculating. Joseph, he said with a grin, I have no doubt tonight will be a success. The dragon hunter pirates may still be prowling the seas, but they don't act as recklessly as they used to. Besides them, who would dare oppose the world government? He laughed, short and arrogant. Once, the slave trade in Sabodi was managed by several celestial dragons jointly. But after the emergence of the dragon hunter pirates, many had chosen to retreat in fear. Charlos, however, had seized the opportunity. He took control of the entire business, expanded it, and brought in new blood. And now, those same nobles who once abandoned ship were returning like rats sniffing gold. What they didn't know, what most people refused to believe, was that St. Charlos wasn't the blundering fool he portrayed. He had perfected the art of acting ignorant, but behind the bumbling facade was a man obsessed with true power. Not just the shallow dominance of nobles, but something greater. He believed the celestial dragons were merely born at the summit, but that the real peak, the true power behind the world government, lay just out of reach. And tonight, he intended to climb one step closer. He could already hear his father's praise echoing in his ears. Suddenly, the doors burst open. A staff member sprinted into the room, face pale as a ghost. Upon seeing St. Charlos, he fell to his knees. What's wrong? Joseph asked, stepping forward. Why the panic? The man gulped. Don Quixote da Flamingo has arrived. He's here, inside the auction house. Joseph's smile faltered. Da Flamingo's name carried more weight now than ever. He wasn't just a former warlord. He was now regarded as a business partner by some of the world government's inner circles. And with that, the dragon hunter pirates backed him. His presence here could only mean trouble. Da Flamingo, Charlos snorted. That Don Quixote trash? Ignore him. He gave up his place among us when he chose to serve someone else. To bend the knee to a pirate, he's worse than S. Joseph hesitated for a breath, then nodded. Understood. Regardless, we mustn't allow any mistakes tonight. The auction must proceed flawlessly. Yes, sir. The staff member bowed again and rushed off. As the grand auction commenced, the atmosphere inside the auction hall was tense with excitement and silent malice. The first item brought to the stage was a massive broadsword. Even at a glance, its extraordinary craftsmanship was evident, gleaming with refined edges, forged from a rare alloy that shimmered under the chandelier's glow. While it lacked the peerless aura of a supreme-grade sword, the weight it exuded couldn't be ignored. Our first item tonight, the auctioneer announced with theatrical flair, is a broadsword forged by the world government's newly appointed master blacksmith, Fluxus. The crowd murmured. In the future, this very master will forge more weapons of unparalleled quality. And tonight, whoever claims this sword will receive an exclusive 80% discount on all future commissions. Starting bid, 100 million berries. The declaration caused a ripple in the crowd. For the nobles lounging below, the sword itself was little more than a status symbol or a trophy for their personal guards. But the discount, now that had value. Because this wasn't about the sword, it was about the future. 100 million, 110 million, 120 million. The prices climbed quickly, greed trailing every bid. When it reached 210 million berries, a calm yet commanding voice cut through the commotion. 300 million berries. All heads turned in unison. At the back of the hall, Doflamingo leaned back in his chair, sign in hand, his grin wide and venomous. Silence followed. No one dared to raise their paddle after that. Doflamingo's mere presence was enough to shut the entire room up. Once seen as just another warlord of the sea, his alliance with the dragon hunter pirates had transformed him into an overlord, the undisputed ruler of the underground world. Every arms deal, black market sale, and illegal auction flowed through his hands now. He set the rules, and even the four emperors had to play by them. Even the world government, ever proud and high-handed, had no choice but to acknowledge his influence. This was exactly why St. Charlos had thrown this massive auction, to reassert dominance, to build a bridge between the allied kingdoms and the world government, and most importantly, to bypass Doflamingo's iron grip on the underworld. But now, the man they sought to outmaneuver had walked straight through their front door, and claimed the first item without resistance. "Congratulations to King Doflamingo of Dressrosa," the auctioneer declared, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. Next, a large cart covered with a thick cloth was wheeled onto the stage. The auctioneer's eyes practically glowed. "Our second item of the night is a discovery of immense strategic value. The ore contained here was unearthed on a remote island. When refined into artillery shells, it causes exponentially more damage than standard materials. But that's not all. This auction is not just for the ore, but for the entire island and its mineral rights." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Ryunosuke's expression shifted slightly. An entire mineral island, handed out in public auction. This wasn't a local decision. This was something the world government had clearly orchestrated. This wasn't just commerce, it was a power move. Before anyone could even react, Doflamingo's hand rose again. 3 billion berries. The auctioneer hadn't even announced a reserve price yet. A hush fell over the room. Nobles who had come for rare slaves and exotic pets suddenly felt out of place. Many of them were dandies, kings of backwater islands, here to flaunt wealth, not compete over military-grade resources. Others, those who did understand the strategic value of such a purchase, stared at their Den Den Mushi connections in silence. No one wanted to go toe-to-toe with him. Then a voice rang out, artificial and cold, filtered through a Den Den Mushi speaker. 4 billion berries. The hall froze again. Doflamingo narrowed his eyes, then chuckled, a slow, high-pitched cackle that grated like nails on glass. "Foo, auctioneer," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "Shouldn't we know who we're bidding against? Transparency and all that. If I can't top it, I'll step down." The laugh that followed was pure cruelty. The auctioneer stiffened. He understood the message loud and clear. This wasn't a polite request, this was a threat. And the noble on the other end of the Den Den Mushi realized the same thing. They had made a fatal mistake. Even through a Den Den Mushi, Doflamingo would find out who they were. He always did. And to cross the dragon hunter pirates, even under the world government's protection, was to sign your kingdom's death warrant. "The noble currently bidding is the kingdom of Lydias," the auctioneer said, his voice trembling slightly. "A small kingdom," Doflamingo snorted. "Didn't expect that. 4.1 billion berries." He raised the bid with casual contempt, as if flicking a bug off his shoulder. In the noble's private chamber, there was only sweat and silence. They dared not respond. They had tried to outbid a man the four emperors avoided crossing. Even Tesoro would think twice before throwing berries at Doflamingo. The auction hall grew unnaturally quiet. The festive, predatory buzz from earlier had dulled to nervous muttering. The auction had veered completely off course. St. Charlos, watching from his private box, looked as if he'd bitten into a sour lemon. Doflamingo's arrival had derailed everything. He hadn't even been invited. And yet, he had waltzed in, stolen the spotlight, and cracked the auction wide open. "This wasn't the plan," Charlos muttered, his tone venomous. None of the outcomes matched his projections. He would still make a profit, sure, but wealth wasn't his aim. Influence, power, and recognition were the true prizes, and with Doflamingo's interference, those goals were slipping away. "Tell the auctioneer to proceed normally," Charlos barked. Ignore that clown and keep the show moving. Stop standing there like an idiot, it's humiliating. The order was quickly relayed. Back on stage, the auctioneer steeled his nerves, gave a quick nod, and hammered down the gavel. Sold, for 4.1 billion berries, to King Doflamingo. Lot after lot rolled onto the stage. Doflamingo bid without hesitation. He didn't flinch, he didn't wait. Weapons, minerals, even rare creatures. He claimed them all like he was filling a pantry. And no one dared to challenge him again. The auctioneer resumed his cadence. No more delays. The process flowed again. But now under a different rhythm. It didn't take long for St. Charlos to realize something was off. No matter what item was brought to the stage, weapon, treasure, Doflamingo raised his paddle without hesitation. What was more infuriating was that even when other nobles placed bids, Doflamingo would always raise it higher. There were even times when Charlos himself tried to play along and test him, but Doflamingo still outbid him with a casual grin. And now, they had entered the second half of the auction. The slave lots had begun. St. Charlos had assumed Doflamingo would lose interest at this point. After all, a man like him wouldn't care about such things. But no, he kept bidding. He bought everything. That's when it finally hit Charlos. Doflamingo hadn't come here to bid. He came to ruin the auction. He wasn't just acting alone. He might very well be acting on behalf of the Dragon Hunter pirates. And if he bought all these items under his name, who would dare to collect payment from him afterward? Certainly not any kingdom, not any navy squad, not even Charlos himself. Veins bulged on the back of Charlos's hand as he gripped his porcelain teacup. Buy up everything from this point forward, he growled to Joseph. But not under our name. Contact a few minor nobles. Tell them to drive the prices up. We can't let Doflamingo dominate this auction any further. It was a hasty strategy, but a calculated one. Let the small fries feel important for a day, enjoy the stage, enjoy the illusion of influence. In return, they'd serve as disposable pawns to block Doflamingo. And with the power of a celestial dragon behind them, they'd feel invincible. Soon after, a long-armed tribe slave was brought to the stage, just a mid-tier lot. The bid? 3.8 billion berries. Gasps filled the room. That price was nearing bounty levels for royals. And this was for a regular slave, nothing rare, nothing enhanced. Doflamingo narrowed his eyes, then stood, arms lazily draped at his sides. The Hall Kingdom, he said with a smirk, just recently became a kingdom, didn't it? The land they own isn't even as big as one of my private islands. He looked around the room theatrically. For a country like that, shouldn't someone have verified their eligibility to even be here? I mean, they couldn't cough up that much cash even if they sold their entire nation. A few muffled chuckles rippled through the audience. Doflamingo smiled. He knew exactly what was going on. From the moment those bids started, he'd figured it out. These weren't real contenders. They were planted nobles. Little puppets fed lines by the likes of Charlos. If this had been any other auction, it might have worked. But they weren't facing just anyone. They were facing Doflamingo, the dark overlord of the underworld. Mr. Doflamingo, the auctioneer snapped, clearly losing patience. Please show some restraint. If you're unclear about something, spreading false accusations comes with consequences. The room tensed. For a brief moment, the auctioneer felt empowered. Doflamingo had been dominating the event, and finally, others were placing bids again. The flow was returning to normal. Then, Doflamingo's head tilted, his lips twisting into a devilish grin. Unclear, he repeated, voice cold. Foo. I probably know more about the yearly finances of these tiny nations than they do. Their ledgers are on my desk every month. You think I've run the black market this long without knowing who can pay? His gaze fell sharply on the small group of minor nobles, those who had dared to challenge him. The pressure in the room spiked instantly. Even with celestial dragons watching from above, even with the protection of the world government, being targeted by Doflamingo was a death sentence. And these nobles knew it. After all, the world government might back a celestial dragon, but they wouldn't protect disposable nobles when the knives came out. You lot. Doflamingo continued, eyes gleaming. You seriously raising the price yourselves? If that's true, I'd be happy to provide free escort services. I'll personally help the world government collect payment from your kingdoms, free of charge. But if you're bluffing, if you drive up the price and can't pay, I'll burn your kingdom to the ground." With that, he sat back down. The corners of his mouth curved into an evil smile. And just as that tension hit its peak, new figures slipped into the auction hall. With security distracted, focused entirely on Doflamingo and the chaos he stirred, no one paid attention to the newcomers. Kid. Law. The supernovas. Ryunosuke, watching silently from the shadows, raised an eyebrow. The presence of so many volatile players could only mean one thing: chaos was coming. Doflamingo felt it too. When Law entered, Doflamingo glanced his way, just a flicker of recognition, and then looked away. He was not worried, he expected trouble. Meanwhile, the pressure on the small nobles had reached its limit. Finally, one couldn't take it anymore. "I was wrong," he cried out, standing and trembling. "I give up, I'm leaving now." He turned to run. Bang! The echo of a gunshot rang out. Gasps. Screams. A celestial dragon had stepped onto the auction stage, St. Charlos. He held a smoking pistol in one hand, eyes wild. He'd shot the noble in the leg, not to kill, but to stop him. If one of the pawns gave up, the rest would crumble, and if they all dropped out, Doflamingo would take the entire auction from him. He couldn't allow that, but the price of playing God was about to catch up to him. 5 color strings. Fine threads glinted in the light as Doflamingo waved a hand, instantly intercepting the second bullet Charlos aimed at the fleeing noble. He stood slowly. "I say," he drawled, "are celestial dragons really this shameless now? You force your lackeys to bid, then shoot them when they can't follow through?" Charlos' face contorted with rage. "You dare block me from killing someone," he snarled. "I am St. Charlos. There is no one I cannot kill. If you get in my way, I'll kill you too." Doflamingo didn't flinch. He let out a cold chuckle and released his armament hockey, a black aura pulsing around him, thick and suffocating. The crowd recoiled. Every noble, every staff member, even the guards, shrank back in fear. The killing intent was real, heavy, tangible. In that moment, Charlos remembered something important. Doflamingo wasn't just some pirate. He had the dragon hunter pirates at his back. If Doflamingo killed him here and now, what could the world government do? Avenge him after the fact? That wouldn't bring him back. His survival instincts screamed at him. He gritted his teeth, snorted coldly, and turned away. TCH. He stormed off the stage, his pride in shambles. Back at the podium, the auctioneer, drenched in cold sweat, forced a smile. "Well, Mr. Doflamingo, we'll finalize that last item at your offer price." He waited for Doflamingo to accept, but instead, Doflamingo growled, leaning forward. "Screw you." The words rang out like a gunshot, and the auctioneer, already pale, turned ghostly white. Doflamingo's final words struck like thunder in the hall, silencing the already shaken crowd. Everyone stared in stunned confusion. What the hell just happened? The auction house had followed Doflamingo's lead, even manipulated bids to match his pace, yet now, he was still dissatisfied? "Those last bids were rigged by you lot to inflate the price," Doflamingo said coolly, his voice dripping with contempt. "So I'll bid again, properly this time." He raised his hand mockingly. "Starting over. No reserve price. My bid, 10,000 berries, for the entire batch." Gasps erupted around the room. The nobles were speechless. Was Doflamingo mocking the auction outright? Or was this the moment he planned to tear it all down? He's provoking the auction house. Would he really dare to start a fight here? There are world nobles present, but he's backed by the dragon hunter pirates, and he's a lunatic himself. A madman with madmen behind him. That's a recipe for disaster. The whispers turned into murmurs of panic. Many nobles began to sweat nervously. If Doflamingo caused a scene here, they could be caught in the crossfire. And with the Don Quixote family silently surrounding the hall's exits, escape was no longer an option. Anyone who tried to leave now might not make it out alive. "Auctioneer," Doflamingo snapped, cutting through the tension like a blade. "What's the matter? Forgot how to run an auction? Or are you implying I can't afford the merchandise?" The auctioneer stood frozen, swallowing hard. From the sidelines, Ryunosuke watched calmly, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Doflamingo was doing exactly what he needed him to do. No script, no rehearsal. Just pure, unrestrained arrogance. It was beautiful. Any other bids? The auctioneer asked, voice trembling. The silence was deafening. Everyone knew this was no longer about money. It had become a showdown between the dragon hunter pirates and the world government, an ideological war disguised as an auction. No noble dared insert themselves into that kind of battle. They valued their heads too much. And so, one by one, they lowered their eyes. No one raised the price. The auctioneer's face turned pale, while the auction house owner looked like he'd swallowed a cactus. But neither dared to confront Doflamingo. "There's nothing we can do," muttered Joseph, Charlos's right-hand man. "But perhaps this isn't a total loss." He leaned toward the fuming celestial dragon. Didn't the dragon hunter pirates claim to be liberators? Well, now Doflamingo just bought slaves. Let's expose him, make it public. Charlos's expression lit up with malicious glee. Yes, he sneered. Yes. Let's call Morgans. Broadcast this whole thing. Show the world that the so-called righteous dragon hunters are nothing more than hypocrites. Joseph nodded quickly, racing to carry out the order. It was the only counterattack they had left. Back in the hall, the auctioneer forced a smile. "Mr. Doflamingo," he announced, "you've officially purchased the entire final lot. In fact, you're the only buyer at tonight's event. What a historic moment. Would you honor us by coming to the stage for a commemorative photo?" "Sure," Doflamingo said nonchalantly, strutting toward the auction table with all the flair of a showman. Behind him, rows of chained slaves were dragged into view. Their eyes were hollow. Many were bruised. Some had clearly been starved, others whipped or broken. A few didn't even flinch as the lights shone on them, shells of who they once were. Their pain was a silent scream. The auctioneer stepped up with a practiced smile. "Congratulations on the successful conclusion of this event." "Hold on," Doflamingo interrupted, lifting a finger. "Since I'm up here, might as well say a few words, right?" The auctioneer beamed. Perfect. The more he spoke, the better the material for Morgan's broadcast. "By all means," he said, handing over the amplifier Den Den Mushi. Doflamingo took it and turned to face the crowd, and then, his voice echoed across the world. "First of all," he said, "thanks to this auction house, for gathering so many slaves in one place." A few chuckles came from the crowd. Secondly, Doflamingo paused. "I'm setting all of them free. They're no longer slaves." The laughter died. "Each of you can return home, or come to Dressrosa and live as a free citizen. We'll provide shelter, food, jobs, and protection." The auctioneer's smile shattered. His eyes widened in horror. Doflamingo was endorsing the dragon hunter pirates, on a global broadcast. And one more thing. Before anyone could react, a thin silk thread gleamed in the light, and in a single instant, the auctioneer's head was severed. The man's body collapsed forward onto the table. Gasps, screams. Nobles backed away in terror. There's no need for someone like that to keep breathing. Doflamingo stepped forward, voice steady. "On behalf of the dragon hunter pirates, I declare this the beginning of a new era. From this moment on, we are launching a global anti-slavery movement. Any kingdom, any organization, any faction caught trafficking in slaves, will be eliminated. Kings, princes, generals, ministers, all of them, regardless of rank, are still just people. And every person has the right to live as a human being." The hall fell into stunned silence. Even the celestial dragons watching from above were frozen. That last line. That was Ryunosuke's touch. Doflamingo didn't even understand it fully when he first read it. But now, standing in front of those broken men and women, it hit home. It doesn't matter who you are. The existence of slavery is the greatest stain on humanity. And the dragon hunter pirates would erase it. "That's about it," Ryunosuke said quietly, stepping forward. His face was calm, his presence overwhelming. At his word, a ball of fire shot into the sky, signaling the beginning. "The Whitebeard pirates support this movement." A familiar voice boomed across the hall. "Ace." He appeared in a burst of flames, his powerful aura sweeping through the auction like a storm. The fire lit up the ceiling and knocked back nobles cowering in the box seats. Flames roared as the first division of the dragon hunter pirates sprang into action. Guards were disarmed. The auction staff were knocked out. Celestial dragon bodyguards were cut down before they could draw their weapons. The takeover was swift, brutal, efficient. Outside, chaos erupted as news of similar strikes across the world spread like wildfire. Slave ships were burning. Entire kingdoms with underground slave markets were falling. Even independent bounty hunters began raiding known slave routes, some out of justice, others to ride the wave of public support behind the dragon hunters. And whether or not the dragon hunter pirates were directly involved, everything was now being attributed to them. They had become a symbol. On the auction stage, Ryunosuke removed his hood. "Let's begin." His words were calm, but absolute. A system prompt rang out in his mind. "Ding! Host has founded No Slavery Day in the One Piece world. Recognition rate among global citizens, 32%. Reputation value 100,000. And so, a new era had begun. One in which every man, woman, and child could hope to live without chains. Day without slavery. The words echoed in Ryunosuke's mind as the system prompt flashed before his eyes. He raised an eyebrow, a curious expression forming on his face. Interesting, he had waged war against the world government before, raised kingdoms, toppled nobility, and spread chaos across the seas. But this slave liberation movement was what earned him a landmark day? He didn't understand the system's criteria, but he wasn't going to complain either. The reward was real. The soaring reputation value was even better. By now, the broadcast had reached countless countries. Morgan's News Coup network made sure of that, and as news spread like wildfire, the world watched the fallout unfold. Meanwhile, in the corner of the auction ruins, 7 celestial dragons had been herded together, trembling, broken, terrified. You better let us go," St. Charlos snapped, trying to maintain a shred of pride. "The world government will never forgive you for this." He was livid. Everything he had planned was in ruins. His influence, his profit, his power, shattered before the eyes of the world. But Ryunosuke remained calm. "They won't forgive me," he said flatly. "Then tell I am to bring out the heavenly king and come after me." He took a step forward. "If he doesn't come, then send whoever you want. I'll kill them all." He stopped, eyes narrowing. "As for you lot, treat this as your final day." Before the celestial dragons could even beg, Ryunosuke's blade flashed. One by one, the heads of the celestial dragons dropped. 7 arrogant gods reduced to corpses, executed live in front of the entire world. Ryunosuke turned to the broadcasting Mushi. "World government," he said, voice firm and steady. "I told you once, and I'll say it again. Every time you kill one of my people, I'll take a celestial dragon in return. Last time, you hid them. This time, I found them myself. Keep hiding, or I'll tear the mountain down to get to you." With that, he waved his hand, and the video feed was cut off. As silence returned to the devastated auction house, Ryunosuke's eyes drifted to the 2 shadows nearby. Trafalgar Law. Eustace Kid. 2 supernovas. 2 future legends. One had challenged Doflamingo himself. The other dared to defy the 4 emperors. Ryunosuke was intrigued. Ruthless, bold, driven, my kind of people. The moment his gaze landed on them, both men instinctively tensed. "We're being targeted," Kid muttered under his breath. Law didn't respond, but his hand hovered close to his blade, his fingers twitching, ready to activate room and teleport away if needed. A direct clash with Ryunosuke? They wouldn't last 5 seconds. "I'm not here to fight," Ryunosuke said casually, a faint smile on his lips. "In fact, I like you too. If you ever get bored of walking your own path, come find me." Before either could react, Ryunosuke vanished from sight and reappeared behind them. His hands landed on their shoulders like iron weights. They couldn't move. It wasn't hockey or a technique. It was pure presence. Their bodies froze, instinctively recognizing a predator far above them. "Law, Kid," Ryunosuke said smoothly, "why don't we grab a drink?" Kid blinked, then let out a laugh. "Sure," he said, nodding. Law frowned but followed Kid's lead, reluctantly agreeing. At this point, Resistance was meaningless. If Ryunosuke wanted them dead, they'd already be corpses. A drink? That was mercy. A few paces away, Doflamingo still stood tall, his flamboyant coat fluttering in the breeze. "Dafi," Ryunosuke called out. "The broadcast's off. Stop posing, let's go drink." Doflamingo turned, lowering his sunglasses slightly. "It's off already," he shrugged. "Fine." Then, he caught a glimpse of Law. Law? In a blink, he was beside him, his silk thread snapping into existence, ready to strike. Law's pupils shrank. Kid prepared to counter. Even Ryunosuke raised a hand, but not to defend. "Let's not," Ryunosuke said, lazily grabbing Doflamingo's arm. "You owe this kid a conversation. He's been stewing in hatred for years, and you never gave him the truth. Letting a kid who ate the Operation Fruit hate you, not a smart play." Doflamingo clicked his tongue. "TCH, you're really dragging out the past, huh?" But he didn't resist. Law's heart pounded. Conversation? Truth? He'd guessed it the moment Ryunosuke mentioned it, but hearing it aloud still shook him. And before he realized it, he found himself walking alongside them, silently following. Kid followed too, arms crossed, grumbling internally. "What am I even doing here? Did I come for the wine or just to listen to their drama?" But he didn't leave. Being invited to drink with Ryunosuke? That's a damn privilege. They arrived at a quiet tavern on a nearby island, untouched by the chaos. The table was quiet at first, until Ryunosuke spoke again. "Rosinante. He's still alive, isn't he?" The glass in Law's hand trembled. "Still with your father, right?" Ryunosuke added, looking straight at Doflamingo. Law stood up, his breath hitching. "Mr. Corazon, he's alive?" He turned toward Doflamingo, eyes wide. Ryunosuke smiled slightly. He already knew the answer, but Law needed to hear it himself. "Yeah," Doflamingo said, waving a hand, "still alive." Then he sighed. "Giving you that grudge helped you grow faster, but in the end, it just turned you into an enemy." He leaned back, raising his glass. "Guess it wasn't such a great plan after all." Law stopped listening to everything else. Corazon was alive. That was all that mattered. He didn't care why, he didn't care how. He just wanted to see him. "Can I see him?" Law asked, voice trembling. Doflamingo smirked. "Of course you can, idiot." Ryunosuke nodded. "Doflamingo, take him back. Give him a seat as a cadre." That's what Rosinante wanted. Law's head snapped toward Ryunosuke, mouth agape. "Cadre, you heard me," Ryunosuke said, lifting his glass. "Go find your answers." Doflamingo raised his own drink, grinning. "Come on, you bastard," he said to Law. "Let's go. You're still as stubborn as ever." He downed his sake in one go. Law hesitated, then sat back down, overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Kid sat off to the side, eyes wide. What the hell is going on? Why am I even here? He looked down at his glass, shrugged, and finally smiled. Screw it. He raised his mug and drank deep. If this is what the new era looks like, I'm not missing it for anything. Purururu. Ryunosuke, who was casually sipping sake, picked up the Den Den Mushi. "What's going on, Najenda?" "Mr. Rayleigh has returned," Najenda replied calmly. "And so has Luffy. Right now, he's locked in a meat-eating contest with Ace." She paused. "Captain, should we expect you soon?" "So they're back already," Ryunosuke muttered, setting down his drink. He turned to the people around him. "Doflamingo, we'll leave the rest to you. I'm going to see Uncle Rayleigh." Then his eyes turned to the brooding man beside him. "And kid, now that you've chosen to sail the seas, don't stay quiet like a coward. Speak through your actions." With those words, Ryunosuke vanished in a flash, his presence like a whisper swallowed by the wind. Doflamingo chuckled. "Law, come on, I'll take you there." The two departed together, leaving only Kid behind at the table where just moments ago the four of them had been laughing over drinks. Kid stared at the empty spot where Ryunosuke had been. "Captain Ryunosuke, did you see the future of the seas in me just now?" He suddenly burst out laughing, the kind that rattles from the chest and echoes with wild ambition. "Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha." His eyes blazed. "New world, I'm coming." As Kid stepped outside, something had shifted within him. The air around him seemed to tremble. His aura surged, his entire presence transformed, and then it happened. One by one, the bystanders nearby dropped like flies, collapsing unconscious. His conqueror's haki had erupted uncontrollably, leaking out like invisible, suffocating gas. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke had already found Rayleigh. With his advanced observation haki, tracking down the old legend was a walk in the park. In truth, Ryunosuke suspected the Navy knew exactly where Rayleigh was too. But they hadn't acted, not because they couldn't, but because they shouldn't. Stirring up one of the Pirate King's remnants might provoke others. Their silence was a form of balance. "Uncle Rayleigh," Ryunosuke called out as he approached the beach. Rayleigh sat there, fishing pole in hand, looking out over the water. "How's Luffy doing?" Rayleigh grinned. "He's improving fast. That boy's got the same reckless fire the captain used to have." His tone was warm, proud, even amused. "Uncle Rayleigh, I came to ask you something. About the past." Rayleigh's gaze sharpened slightly. "Raftel?" Ryunosuke nodded. Even now, Raftel remained a mystery, even to him. A pirate whose crew rivaled the Roger pirates in strength. Why had Roger chosen to disband his crew after reaching Raftel? Why surrender? Why silence? Something didn't add up. "You should know." Rayleigh began slowly, eyes still on the sea. "The so-called Raftel isn't the end. In fact, it's the beginning." Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed. "The starting point?" "Yeah. Other than the captain, none of us went all the way in. He went alone." The words struck Ryunosuke like thunder. That wasn't what the world believed. Suddenly, memories clicked into place. Back then, at sea near Raftel, Kazuki Toki had fallen sick with a fever. Buggy, the only other person with a unique ability on board, collapsed the same way. Two special ability users, both struck with inexplicable illness. Was it something Captain Roger said? That it was the starting point? Rayleigh nodded. "After coming back, he told us that. Then he disbanded the crew, never said why." Ryunosuke's expression darkened. "What about people with special abilities? Are they unable to set foot on Raftel?" "I don't have a solid answer," Rayleigh admitted. "But I do know this. Bullet forced his way onto the island and was bedridden for days. That man's built like a war machine. Illness shouldn't even be possible for someone at his level." He took a long drink from his flask. That sickness wasn't natural. Suddenly, the pieces aligned in Ryunosuke's mind. Bullet had obtained Raftel's eternal pointer, yet never went. Instead, he staged a massive war feast, drawing pirates, marines, and even world government agents. He wasn't just testing the new generation, he couldn't go to Raftel himself. "Ryunosuke," Rayleigh said, glancing at him with interest, "if anyone could uncover Raftel's truth, it might be you. If that day comes, share the tale with me." A smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I'm curious. Where did you find such terrifying and loyal monsters for your crew?" Ryunosuke chuckled and scratched his head sheepishly. "Hey, yeah, let's just say it wasn't exactly conventional." "Parururu." The Den Den Mushi buzzed again. "Captain, Ace and Luffy are asking for you," Najenda voice reported. "Also, the world government sent someone over. Should we wait?" "No need," Ryunosuke replied. "Gather everyone. And bring the Straw Hat crew aboard too. Kun will handle navigation. We're heading to Fishman Island." He paused, voice sharp and dismissive. "As for the world government's lackeys, they won't send anyone worth fighting." "Understood, Captain," Najenda replied before the call ended. Ryunosuke stood. "Uncle Rayleigh, I'll be off then." With a flash, he vanished once more. Not long after, Shaki emerged from the shadows nearby. She had been there all along, listening. "Rayleigh," she said softly, "do you think the dragon hunter pirates can really uncover the truth buried for centuries?" "If he does," she hesitated, "then maybe," but she didn't finish the thought. Rayleigh watched the horizon, a nostalgic gleam in his eye. That boy doesn't care about being Pirate King. But the fire in his eyes, that's the thirst for truth. He chuckled. And those monsters following him, yeah, the captain made the right call. Shaki didn't say more, she turned and left silently. Rayleigh remained by the sea, lost in memories of the past. Once, he too had sailed freely across these waters. Then, from his coat, he drew a small object, smooth and glowing faintly. The eternal pointer. The captain told us not to hold on to this, Rayleigh murmured. But maybe it's finally time. The pointer Roger had once thrown into the sea, Rayleigh had made a new one. The time for it to re-emerge had come. Pirates, the world government, nations, all would soon be drawn into its orbit. Let's speed this all up, Rayleigh muttered. He lifted the Den Den Mushi and dialed. Beru Beru. A voice snapped from the other side, irritated and impatient. Rayleigh, what the hell do you want now? Rayleigh smirked. Bullet. I've got the eternal pointer. Come and get it. At the same time, back aboard the Thousand Sunny. A familiar group had just arrived. Ha ha ha, brother. The moment Ryunosuke stepped onto the deck, Luffy shot toward him like a rocket, arms flailing and grin wide. No matter how strong Luffy got, his energy remained as chaotic as ever, like a husky on a sugar rush. Seriously, between Garp and Dragon, who the hell did he inherit this from? There were no husky genes in that family tree. Was Luffy a genetic anomaly? Brother, Ace called out as he walked over with a warm smile. Truth be told, Ryunosuke used to find Ace a bit dense. But when compared to Luffy, Ace might as well be the poster boy for rational behavior. It's been a while since we've all been together, Ace continued. But you went to sea after us and somehow became this strong? You've been training in secret, haven't you? Luffy, despite his simplicity, could sense the pressure coming from Ryunosuke. Even without any Conqueror's haki being released, the aura was undeniable. Ryunosuke just chuckled. Let's just say the stuff I've had to deal with out at sea isn't exactly what you'd call normal. By the way, Ace added, didn't you say you had a surprise for us? You'll see when we reach the new world, Ryunosuke replied, grinning. First stop, Fishman Island. Fishman Island? Luffy repeated. But Nami said we'd need a coating to go down there, otherwise. Boom. Right on cue, Kun appeared from the sky, his massive form casting a shadow over the ship, then chomped down and swallowed the entire crew in one go. Darkness. Wah. Brother, we got eaten. Ha ha ha. Luffy laughed, not the least bit panicked. He couldn't see a thing, but his observation haki gave him a decent read of their surroundings. It was dark, but safe. This is my crew member, Kun, Ryunosuke explained. With him, we don't need coding. He takes us straight to the deep sea, nice and easy. As he spoke, soft blue lights flared up, illuminating the vast interior of the ship of gods, the space within Kun's body. Even with 2 full ships docked inside, there was plenty of room. It was like being in a floating palace. Let's have a party, Ryunosuke said cheerfully. It'll take a while to get to Fishman Island. Najenda, set things up. In no time, delicious food and barrels of fine wine were rolling in. Naturally, the banquet was held aboard the ship of gods. No offense to the Thousand Sunny, but it was too small for Ryunosuke's style. Meat, sake. I'll help, Sanji volunteered enthusiastically, already tying on an apron. Meanwhile, everyone else just waited to eat. On the side deck, Nejiko approached Nami with a gentle smile. Nami, how have you been lately? Not bad, Nami replied, her tone unusually calm. I've grown a lot, stronger, smarter. But, why are you out at sea too? And as the navigator of the Dragon Hunter pirates? The question hung in the air. Nejiko hesitated. She still hadn't figured out how to explain everything. Not the part about the king, or her rapid rise in the pirate world. So Nami remained in the dark. She only knew that her sister had joined the most famous crew sailing the Grand Line. And not just as a combatant, as their navigator. Even top-tier fighters like Enel and Hawkins were relegated to squad leader roles. But Nejiko, straight to the helm. Sure, she could sense weather patterns, but she didn't have Nami's raw talent for drawing sea charts. In Nami's eyes, that didn't add up. The captain and I met at sea, Nejiko said, launching into a condensed version of her adventures. Nami's response was immediate and predictable. Sis, the Dragon Hunter pirates must be loaded, right? Her eyes sparkled like berries. She didn't care about the how or why anymore. If her sister was safe and rich, everything else could wait. Money? Nejiko laughed nervously. That's all handled by Captain Najenda, the First Division's leader. I haven't seen them looting anything, so I guess, yeah, they must be rich. That wasn't a lie. Nejiko had no clue where the money came from, But considering the feast-sized portions the crew regularly devoured, they were definitely not poor. Before joining, she thought her appetite was huge. But after watching these monsters eat, she realized she was just a snack in comparison. That sounds amazing. Meanwhile, we, the Straw Hats, are broke, Nami groaned. We don't make money. We burn it. Especially Luffy. That guy alone eats half our budget. She held her head in defeat. A voice floated in. Nami, are the Straw Hats short on funds? Yes, I swear. The money I saved just, brother Ryunosuke. Nami froze. That voice belonged to someone she'd met long ago. Back in the East Blue, Nami had boarded Ryunosuke's ship briefly. Back then, everyone in Kokoyashi village feared him. Called him a demon, a monster, a walking disaster. But in hindsight, he'd just been passing through. Now, thinking about it, if she joined him back then, she might have had all the treasure in the world. But she also wouldn't have met the idiots she now called crewmates. Yes, they were stupid. Yes, they were broke, but they were her idiots. Her smile softened. Najenda, Ryunosuke said, raising a sake cup. When we part ways with the Straw Hats, give them some money. Luffy looks like he's been starving for days. He burst into laughter. Luffy, still chewing meat with chipmunk cheeks, looked up confused. Brother, that's not. Wham! Before he could finish, Nami appeared behind him like a thunderbolt and punched him into the deck. Thank you, brother Ryunosuke, she said sweetly, eyes gleaming. This is just what we needed. She turned to glare at the others, eyes glowing with a quiet threat. In an instant, Zoro, Chopper, Usopp, and the rest all nodded frantically. Even if Luffy was their captain, Nami was the real boss when it came to finances. No one wanted to test her wrath. Najenda-san. Akame-chan, Nijiko-san. Sanji zipped through the banquet like a love-struck waiter, delivering food, drinks, and flirty remarks. The man had fully entered simp mode. But oddly enough, it worked. For now, all was well aboard the ship of gods. Sanji's dream was simple. Food, women, and a peaceful moment like this. He didn't need anything more. As bickering and banter continued, the crew soon arrived at Fishman Island. It wasn't until Kun emerged from the deep that everyone truly realized his size. When he surfaced, towering over coral towers and the vast coral dome, there was no mistaking it. Kun was larger than the entire Fishman Island itself. And with his arrival came more than just shock. A swarm of sea kings appeared, massive beasts of the deep, eyes burning with purpose. They weren't here to attack, but to protect. Their presence sent a clear message. The king is here. Just as tension peaked and the Sea Kings began circling Kun, a gentle voice echoed through the sea. Everyone, stand down, the voice called out. Master Ryunosuke has returned. It was Shirahoshi. The mermaid princess. No, the sea goddess in waiting, now radiated a commanding aura. Time had changed her. She was no longer the trembling crybaby hiding in the palace. Her presence was regal, her beauty even more breathtaking, and her spirit resolute. All right, let's go meet her, Ryunosuke said with a smile. At his words, Kun opened his jaws and gently inserted his mouth through the island's protective bubble. Because he was a sea creature, the barrier remained unbroken. One by one, the crew stepped out into the glimmering light of Fishman Island. The mermaid princess? You mean the one they say is the most beautiful in the entire world? Sanji's brain went into overdrive, thoughts racing at light speed. Sanji, no, Chopper cried. Don't look at her, Chopper, ever the cautious doctor, was in full panic mode. He knew the routine. Sanji always bled from the nose when he saw a beautiful woman. But Shirahoshi? That level of beauty might actually kill him. Sanji, think of your dream, all blue, Chopper begged. If I can't see Princess Shirahoshi, then what's the point of dreams at all? Bang! Sanji spun around dramatically, and immediately turned to stone. Petrified, Chopper screamed, circling him in despair. Even though there was no Hody Jones causing trouble this time, Sanji still couldn't escape fate. Shirahoshi swam up, concerned. Master Ryunosuke, what happened to your friend? He looks hurt. Despite her growing strength, her heart remained kind. Seeing someone fall like that, even a stranger, worried her. Ryunosuke waved it off. "Don't worry, he'll be fine." That sort of thing happens to him a lot. After all, Sanji's physiology was unique. As a Germa prince, he was tougher than he looked. "Lord Ryunosuke," Shirahoshi asked, eyes wide with hope, "what brings you back to Fishman Island?" She remembered his promise clearly. One day, he'd return. One day, he'd invite her to set sail with him. "I came to keep my word," Ryunosuke replied. "Shirahoshi, would you come to sea with me?" The moment he spoke, Shirahoshi's eyes lit up. For so long, she'd waited, trained with sea kings, hardened her resolve, and shed her fear. She was no longer just a protected princess, she was ready to follow him. "I do," she said with a brilliant smile, "I'll go." "Ding, congratulations, host. Shirahoshi has joined your crew. Gained 50,000 reputation points. Extracting abilities. Authority over sea kings, command and control activated. Ding. Recruitment complete. Kun. Extracting aura-based abilities." Suddenly, an enormous wave of life force surged through Ryunosuke's body. It was so powerful, even the other crew members felt it, an overflowing energy that rippled across the ship of gods. "Absorb it," Ryunosuke shouted. "Integrate it while you can." The life force flowed through the ship like a tidal wave. Even Sanji, still unconscious, shot upright like nothing happened. The boost was monumental. Elsewhere, in the New World, Meliodas stood atop the prow of a ship, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "Looks like Captain recruited another monster," he muttered, sensing the surge of power echoing in his veins. His body, already a monster, had just been pushed even higher. "Captain, this energy carries something else," said Ban, holding out his palm as golden particles gathered in his hand. This is the power of rules, the very laws that govern this world." Meliodas narrowed his eyes. "Can you analyze it?" Ban shook his head. "It's suppressed. Maybe because we're not natives of this world. If we were back home, I could dissect this in a second." A pause. "Captain," he added, voice grim, "have you ever thought our presence here might not be coincidence?" Meliodas gave a rare chuckle. "Even if it isn't, I'm not worried." "Why?" "Because our captain is more terrifying than whatever made this world." Meanwhile, in another corner of the Grand Line, Crollo Lucifer stood on a quiet hill, flipping through his book of stolen abilities. "Captain, my Nen ability feels like it's breaking through," said Shizuku with a puzzled look. "I wasn't even trying." Her vacuum cleaner weapon hummed with more power than ever before, its shape subtly shifting. She was a conjurer, and breakthroughs like this usually took months, if not years. But this was her second sudden evolution since arriving in this world. "The captain must have done something again," Crollo said, smiling. "Let everyone adapt to their power spikes. Then we resume the mission." He looked up at the sky. "This world is far more interesting than I thought." Elsewhere again, Yahiko and Jigokudo stood quietly, their bodies trembling, not from fear, but change. Their cybernetic bodies were being transformed at the cellular level. Circuits and steel were giving way to organic tissue. They were becoming fully human again. Even their internal systems were being rewritten. What kind of monstrous vitality had Ryunosuke triggered? With the addition of Shirahoshi and Kun, the overall strength of the Dragon Hunter pirates had taken yet another leap forward. In fact, even Shirahoshi herself seemed to grow stronger under the influence of the Dragon Hunter pirates' aura, an unconscious response to being part of a crew that defied fate. A sudden beam of light descended from above, enveloping Shirahoshi's body. She transformed, right before everyone's eyes, into a cocoon of glowing light. "What's this?" Ryunosuke's eyes widened slightly, his tone calm but tinged with surprise as he gazed at the mysterious cocoon. In all his knowledge, mermaids didn't possess this kind of transformation ability. "Captain Ryunosuke." Neptune approached in a hurry, flanked by a small group of royal guards. Although he had known of their arrival, he hadn't expected them to reach the palace so soon. If Shirahoshi hadn't informed him in advance, Neptune likely wouldn't have noticed their presence until after the feast was halfway through. "King Neptune," Ryunosuke greeted. "This is something I didn't expect. What exactly is happening to Shirahoshi?" Neptune followed his gaze and only now noticed the large cocoon of radiant light floating beside them. His expression stiffened. Is that Shirahoshi?" Neptune muttered, concern clouding his voice. At first glance, he thought it was some other fishman's transformation. But now, he realized, this was his daughter. She was already in that state when we arrived, Ryunosuke said. Is she in danger? A serious glint flashed across his eyes. Shirahoshi wasn't just a powerful ally, she was the Poseidon of this generation. If something happened to her now, it would be an unimaginable loss. And if this change was somehow triggered by her joining the Dragon Hunter pirates, Ryunosuke would bear full responsibility. There's no danger, Neptune said after a deep breath, though his brows remained furrowed. But, it seems she's beginning her transformation. She's going to gain her own legs. Her own legs? Ryunosuke echoed, momentarily caught off guard. He had heard whispers of this legend, that mermaids could transform and grow legs when they encountered someone they truly wished to follow, or someone they fell in love with. But until now, he dismissed it as folklore. To see it with his own eyes? King Neptune, Ryunosuke said, regaining his composure. From today onward, Shirahoshi will be a full-fledged member of the Dragon Hunter pirates. If you ever need assistance, don't hesitate to contact us. With that, he handed Neptune his personal Den Mushi. Previously, despite his friendly ties with Fishman Island, Ryunosuke hadn't shared his contact information so freely. But this time, he was taking away the king's daughter. Some form of compensation was the least he could offer. Perhaps this is her destiny, Neptune murmured, reluctantly taking the Den Mushi. Still, Captain Ryunosuke, I entrust Shirahoshi to your care. She's never left this place before. I understand, Ryunosuke nodded solemnly. I'll protect her. Then, with a simple motion, he summoned a burst of energy that gently lifted the glowing cocoon into the air. Without warning, he tossed it straight into Kun's gaping mouth. Oi, Ryunosuke, what are you doing throwing a princess into a giant sea beast's mouth? A voice shouted from the background, likely Sanji's. But Ryunosuke ignored him. The truth was, Shirahoshi was undergoing a transformation. If she emerged without any clothes, Sanji might really die from blood loss. Better to let her complete it somewhere private. With that handled, Neptune announced that food and drinks were prepared. The pirates were invited to rest and enjoy themselves. 3 days later, the Dragon Hunter pirates had mostly recovered from their training and celebrations. In particular, Tatsumi and Mine had experienced a surge in strength, nearly doubling their previous power levels. The others, too, had gained considerable benefits from their time on Fishman Island. Najenda, get ready, Ryunosuke said. I have something to take care of. Najenda nodded and immediately began gathering supplies. Whenever Ryunosuke used that tone, it meant they were about to leave. Given how much they'd consumed during the banquets, it was about time to replenish supplies and move on. Meanwhile, Luffy had eaten so much over the past 3 days that he was now completely immobilized, sprawled out like a beached whale. The rest of the Straw Hat crew were busy chatting with members of the Dragon Hunter pirates, exchanging stories and techniques. Soon, Ryunosuke arrived at a small, quaint cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the island. It was Shiarly's shop. Captain Ryunosuke, Shiarly greeted calmly, as if she'd been expecting him. Welcome. There was no one else inside. Just her, sitting beside a polished crystal ball, waiting. Madam Shiarly, Ryunosuke said with a faint smile, you knew I'd come. Would you like a divination? She asked directly, skipping all pleasantries. Yes, Ryunosuke replied, taking a seat. I tried to divine your fate once before, back when you first came to Fishman Island, Shiarly said, her voice quiet. But I couldn't see anything clearly. You were surrounded by a strange mist, something impenetrable. She paused. But this time, I saw something, a crack. Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed slightly. A crack, yes, Shiarly nodded. You were there, and so were all your crew members. Even Princess Shirahoshi was present. But there were others too, people I don't recognize. That gave Ryunosuke pause. The rest of the 4th Division hadn't assembled yet. Could this vision be pointing toward the future, a gathering of all members? What does the crack mean? He murmured. I don't know, Shiarly admitted. It's dangerous to delve deeper. The more powerful the person I divine for, the greater the backlash. You especially strain the very threads of fate. Just as she finished speaking, a strange vibration surged from Ryunosuke's chest. It was faint, like the echo of a deep, ancient resonance. He stood up and bowed slightly. "Thank you, Madam Shirley. This is your reward." He left behind a drop of shimmering life essence and a sealed box of treasure before vanishing without another word. Ryunosuke, captain of the Dragon Hunter pirates. Shirley whispered, staring at the place where he'd stood. "This world will change because of you. I saw it, but I didn't dare tell you." Even though she hadn't revealed the full truth, the toll on her body was instant. Her skin cracked and dried, wrinkles appearing as her youth drained away. In mere seconds, the beautiful fortune-teller had withered into an old woman. Such was the cost of peering too deeply into Ryunosuke's fate. But then, something stirred. The vial of life essence pulsed beside her, emitting a radiant glow. Trembling, Shirley opened it. The overwhelming vitality wrapped around her like a tide, soaking into her pores. Her skin smoothed rapidly, her vitality returning at an astonishing pace. In moments, she was not only restored, but more youthful than before. "So, you knew about my hidden illness." Her eyes softened. "Thank you, Captain Ryunosuke." With a gentle smile, Shirley put away the crystal ball, shut the cafe doors, and headed to rest. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke had already returned to Kun. Having fully inherited the power of Poseidon, even the crushing pressure of the deep sea no longer posed a threat to him.